Is that what that's about? Do you know about that?
Yeah, I think they're doing a fundraiser thing,
Yeah, I saw that.
something like that.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Mark.
Let's see. Let's just wait another minute here. Got many of us on, but not quite all yet. Who is missing here? So Thomas is missing. Rich is missing. And who else? 1, 2,
Thomas.
8. Thomas and Rich. Okay.
Mark,
Yes.
Rich is in the milk room and he has his phone in his pocket. Did you get that message?
I did not, but that's okay.
Okay, so he is listening to the meeting and will use his camera when he can.
Okay, very good. And when we ask him whether he's alone, he'll say no, because he's with the cows.
With a lot of women, yes.
With a lot of women.
He must love that.
Okay, very good. I think we should go ahead and get started since it's just after 5:30 and hopefully Thomas will join. And so Neil, do you see, is Rich, is he able to hear him if he decides to turn his volume on?
Yes, Rich just joined,
okay.
so you should be
Excellent.
able to now.
Okay, I see him now. Very good. Okay.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Rich.
Hi.
I'm going to have to put the phone in my pocket here shortly, and I guess I'll be listening in more than viewing in.
Okay, sure thing. We'll take roll call after I do the read the right to know information.
Okay.
And hopefully Thomas will join us. So let me go ahead and call this meeting of the Hopkinton Budget Committee to order Wednesday, January 27th. It looks like we are recording. Thank you, Neil. I'm going to start with the right to know law meeting checklist. We all know it and love it. As chair of the Hopkinton Budget Committee, due to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis and in accordance with Governor Sununu's emergency order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. Please note there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's order. But in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm that we are providing public access to the meeting utilizing the Zoom platform. All members of the committee have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Zoom platform. And the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting by either joining the Zoom link or by dialing in at 1-646-558-8656. The meeting ID is 892-1128-8232. We've given notice to the public previously about how to access this meeting using Zoom, and the instructions are provided on the Town of Hopkinton's website at www.hopkinton-nh.gov or the town's Facebook page. If anybody listening or participating has a problem, please call 603-746-8242, or you can email at townadmin@hopkinton-nh.gov. And in the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call. And we'll start with roll call attendance. When you state your name or your presence, please also state whether there's anyone in the room with you during this meeting required under the right to know law. And I'll just go in the order on my screen and start with you, Norm.
Norm Gupel, I am here and I am alone.
Don,
Don Houston, alone.
Janet,
Janet Krasaniak, alone.
Ken,
Ken Traum, alone.
Ginny,
Ginny Haynes, alone.
Steve, ready.
Steve Reddy, alone.
Great. Jonathan,
Jonathan Cohen, I am alone and I am here.
Rich,
I am here, alone.
Thomas, perfect timing.
Here and alone.
Great. And Mark Zankel, I am here alone as well. So let's kick things off then with the pledge. And Jonathan, would you be willing to do that tonight?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation.
Nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next up is the approval of the January 20th, 21 meeting minutes. And let me ask for a motion.
Yeah, I'll move we approve the minutes.
Thank you, Ken. A second.
Second,
Janet, thank you. Are there any corrections or clarifications needed? Tammy, you're crushing it. Thank you, Tammy. Nice job.
You're welcome.
Rapid turnaround.
Exhausting turnaround.
Okay, I'm going to do a quick roll call vote in favor of the minutes, and I'll start with you, Norm.
Norm Gupel is a yes.
Don,
Don Houston, yes.
Janet,
Janet, yes.
Ken,
Ken, yes.
Ginny,
Ginny, yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Steve,
Steve Reddy, yes.
Rich, if you're able to chime in,
Yes.
and Mark is a yes. Very good. Thank you. Okay. Next up on the agenda is to continue the discussion that we started last week around the assessment and valuation for use in budgeting. And we decided to send Ken off with a few questions that we were curious about to gather some more information to inform our conversation. And so Ken, would it be okay if I turn it over to you to provide an update on the things that you were exploring?
Yeah, I had thought you were going next, Mark, but in terms of any more information, I don't think I have any more of a breakdown about how many renovations or things like that, or the values of them. I've had discussions with Neil, and he can speak for himself, certainly. But I'd say, looking at what's happened over the last number of years, whether the committee would be more comfortable with 0.5%, which seems to be much more consistent with recent history.
Okay, thanks, Ken. So Neil, maybe I can run through the questions that came up last week in the committee, and if you want to comment on any of them, just to elaborate, that we'd welcome that. And if we get you outside your comfort zone, I know you will let us. You'll let us know. So here are the things that were listed. One was, do we have a sense? I think in essence, if I was to frame it up, we were trying to think about how can we reconcile a proposed 1% valuation increase of $7.8 million with what we know as of now in terms of the building projects, new constructions and renovations that either are complete or are likely to be complete by the time you have to submit the data on April 1st, I guess. And so the specific things that came up were, any sense of the net increase in value of the Maple Street project, how far along are these 15 new homes, and do we have a sense of the value of those? Are they, we were talking about average Hopkinton house value of 300,000, but maybe these are much higher value. Any sense of the value, the collective value of the remodels and renovations? And generally some people were curious, what's your overall opinion and comfortable? So those were the things that came up with the budget committee. Folks can add more now, but that's what we were curious about last week.
Sure. So property is taxed on whatever is there on April 1st. So you may have 15, I think we had just over 15 building permits in 2020. It's possible all those homes are done on April 1st. It's possible none of them have even been started on April 1st. And we don't really have a good way. I suppose we could sit down with the building inspector who inspects them and goes through to figure out where they're at. The other thing we don't really have is a good value of what those are worth. There is a spot on the application for applicants to put down the value. And so I sat down with Karen over the last week and we looked at those, and they're kind of all over the place. Where a small 2-bedroom house, they had put 500,000, which didn't seem reasonable to us. But then a 5-bedroom home was listed at 250,000, which didn't seem reasonable either in the other direction. So really, we don't have any good numbers on that. We may want to look at in the future trying to get better numbers so we can track that better. But it's kind of a lot of unknowns there. So, and the other thing that's worth noting, which sometimes can be confusing, is all the added value that will come in 2021 is based on actual construction, either the remodels or the houses. And they are entered into the system and they are assessed at 2019 values, because we do the statistical update and change the values in the system every 5 years. We're on a rolling basis, the data or the physical attributes at each location is reviewed 25% a year for 4 years. But even if somebody's added a deck that's added there, it's at the 2019 value, because it wouldn't be fair if you built your house this year and your neighbors assessed at 2019 values, and you're assessed at 2020 or 2021 values. and we do not and cannot, under state DRA regulations, do what's called chase sales, where if something sells, we adjust everything every year. That is not, the statistical part only happens every 5 years. So that's kind of where that process is. So that's why if you look through the 10-year jump, you'll see we went up 155 million in 2019 from 2018, and that largely was the reval. Now, people could say, okay, everything's selling way above that now, it must have gone up a lot, but we're not going to see that reflected in the assessed valuation until 2024, when the statistics change, and we'll see what happens then. Based on what we've seen in the past, the other thing worth noting is 2019 to 2020, we actually lost almost $4 million in value because of the change in the exemptions. So there are other factors that go into that. Added elderly exemptions or any types of exemptions drops that assessed valuation. And we don't really know those. Everything's due April 1st, so we won't know until after that how that changed. So based on what we've seen, we probably add in construction 3 to 5 billion a year, probably 5's on the really high side. It kind of averages pretty close to 4. So I think the 8 would be pretty hard to reach. My concern always is 2, we always try to estimate revenues conservatively and use an evaluation that we have, because in October, these numbers are what they are, and they'll be used to set the tax rate. And we've worked really hard to make sure when we tell voters, this is what we estimate the tax to be. It's fine to come in a few pennies under, but I never really want to come in over that, because I think we owe it to the voters to make sure we meet what we tell them we're planning to meet. We tell them that at town meeting. Did that answer your questions?
I have one question, and welcome from the committee. Can you just explain the mechanics? Like what you said, the valuation will be based on whatever's in the system by April 1st and sent to the state. And then you told us that we don't know how many of those 15 new homes or whatever number of renovations will actually get done by then. What's sort of the mechanics of how those, let's say I built a new house this year and it's valued at $300,000 and it got completed next week. How does that get into the system?
So anyone who has a building permit and is doing construction, they're put on what's called a pickup list, and the assessors around probably a month before to a month after in that time frame visits each of those properties and assesses it on what is there then. So technically, if you were building a house and nothing was there on March 31st, and then it was totally there on April 1st, or actually April 2nd. Not April, it wasn't there April 1st, it was there April 2nd. You wouldn't be taxed on that at all. But if you finished that house and built it all on April 1st and it was there, then you're assessed on it. So they go out to all the places with building permits, and then that gets entered into the system. Now, it's the MS1, which is what we report to the state on our valuation, is due September 1st. So it's just to be clear, it's not necessarily what's in our system, it's what the value is on April 1st, and we have a little bit of time to get all those entered into there. But the value is as of April 1st.
Great, thanks, Neil. And I'm going to suggest before we go forward, you might want to, if you want to mute yourself, Neil, maybe you can mute Rich.
I can do that.
So if you have a question for Neil, either wave or raise your hand in the participant button. or comment?
Okay, first I want to certainly thank Neil. He explained that, and a lot of it I didn't understand very well either. I understand it better now. And I want to repeat what I had said last week, that when the select board was looking at different revenue sources, where we may have been a little aggressive in the 1% valuation, I think we were extremely conservative in assuming that the state room and meals would be getting 20% less. The highway block grant would be getting 20% less, and the municipal aid would be getting zero. So we looked at those all together, and so if this committee decides that we should stick with the 0% increase in evaluation, I ask for some leave to, on Monday, ask the select board to revisit those other estimates, because I think we have from Neil some better feel for what the reductions would be, and they won't be as deep as we had originally expected.
Thanks, Ken. Other questions or comments? We're leading up to, just for what it's worth, I'm going to ask the budget committee to vote on our preference for what number the town and the school should use. So I just want to make sure people have a chance to share get it all on the table here. Okay. Steve, ready?
Given that information, I'm going to make a motion then for the 0.5%.
Okay, so Steve is making a motion, and Steve, if I can just maybe just that we recommend the use of a 0.5% increase over the 2020 valuation, 2020 assessment valuation for use in the 2021 budgets.
Yeah, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Neil, but I believe is consistent with the numbers that you were just talking about.
That would be about 3.9 million, if I understand right, and that's sort of in the ballpark of what the average has been in non-reassessment years. Neil, can you kind of validate that for us?
Yes, I was just figuring.
So while you do that,
what
let me just ask if there's a second to Steve Reddy's motion, and then we can talk about it.
I'll second.
Okay, so Ken is seconding it. So now let's open it up for conversation. And Norm, I saw your hand, but hang on. Let's see if Neil has the answer to that question, if that's okay.
For some reason I'm not entering it.
Neil, do you want to just take a minute and we can have Norm share what he's on his mind?
Sure, it looks like it's 3.9 million.
3.9 million would be the 0.5% increase.
Correct.
And you have already shared with us a spreadsheet which we looked at last meeting, which shows that the average valuation increase in non-reval years was about 3.5 million.
Right, and there was an outlying low year, so we've been between 3.5 and 4, in most except for the reval year, 1, 2, 3, in the last 5, 6 years, except for the reval year.
Okay.
So.
And the other thing I think that we've heard from what you shared with me, Neil, and what you shared, Kim, is that the 15 new building permits plus the volume we have a high volume of building and remodeling going on this year. So we would expect probably to at least hit the average this year.
This was more building permits this year than we've had probably in the last 5 to 10 years put together. Things had been slow, and remodeling was especially hot. I think people were home and decided they wanted to change at their house.
So Norm, you're up, and then I see Steve Chamberlain has his hand raised as well.
Yeah, is there any way you can add Michelle Clark to this? I just wanted to comment, I'm surprised we have a motion when the school district hasn't even gave their recommendation on what we wanted to do. It kind of seems you haven't given us a chance to defend what we're doing on our end.
I think now is the time for you to share that, Norm, because what we're talking about is, the school district, well, maybe you can tell us if you have changed your perspective. The previous 2 meetings, you have said that you were using a the 2020 valuation, and we're trying to come up with something that we would recommend for everybody. So if you have perspective, I think now is the time to share it.
Okay, so I appreciate the budget committee giving me a week to talk to Michelle and the board about this, because we needed to have some background on how Michelle formulates this. And Michelle walked us through what number we use, and she walked us through the DRA form that you all received in your packet, the valuation of 780 million. This is a number the district has used for many years, something that we are committed to the tax rate, the voters in town, that when they see a warrant, they're knowing what they're going to be voting on. They're not going to be surprised when it comes to settling the tax rate later. At another time, it's going to be different. Every board member agreed that we support Michelle and Steve using the format that we've used over the last couple of years. To me, in my personal opinion as a controller, to me, this is a paper trail that's a document that I can say to anyone when doing a budget, this is the number that makes sense, and the risk level that I'm putting forward to the taxpayers that I can say is an honest assessment that I'm returning what's been promised to them. I'm happy to have Michelle and Steve speak more to this, but from the board's perspective, we would like to continue and maintain the valuation that has been appropriated on the tax breakdown for Hopkinton. That's 780 million. Michelle, would you like to comment anything that maybe I missed?
The only thing I would just say is that I just want to make sure people understand that in a change of evaluation, it appears nowhere on the revenue sheet. The MS-27 doesn't change at all. All it does is have a little notation that could say in this case, 10 cents less of an impact for the operating article than what we have on there right now. That's all. But if we use that, and what happens when if it doesn't come in at that is my concern. And then we go up more money than what we promised the voters, because as Norm said, we've always wanted to be less than what we promised the voters. So I just want to make sure people understand that there's nowhere that evaluation appears anywhere on the MS-27. It's nothing. We've never talked about it before, but all it would do is potentially, if the board agrees, to use it, because it could be that the board decides to have their little notation be the valuation of 780, which would then differentiate if the budget committee voted in favor of what is being talked about, then it would just be a different notation underneath that Article 2 based on an evaluation that is estimated.
And I guess I would caution the budget committee, not be proud with a bigger budget, but the impact is a little bit more significant on the school side, us taking an elevated risk at something that possibly not happen. When you're in the voting, you want to be voting, knowing what you're going to get. And that's what a lot of people in this town have done for years. And it's something that the school board and the school district can defend, that we use this number. And it doesn't change the history of what we've tried to accomplish, and having a new trend of a risk assessment of a different valuation.
Thanks, Norm. Steve, you've had your hand up for a while. Did you want to share some perspective here?
Michelle hit it. The only thing that I would add, so functionally, all this does is change the presentation. That the presentation, I know it's the budget committee public hearing in February 10th, and the budget committee will present. So on the slide that says estimated tax impact, it would be a different estimated tax impact because the budget committee would use their number. I mean, as Michelle said, it's not a number that is filled out on the legal document, which it doesn't change the amount of the budget. It really is a perception of the optics of the number, whether you use this evaluation, I guess. Then we'd be setting the precedent then if we felt that if the values were going down, then some years we'd have to use a percent going down. And that means the tax rate would be affected in the other way. So for my piece, and also the school, we have two tax rates. We have the local and we have the SWEP, the statewide educational property tax. That is a different tax rate because utilities aren't included. And both of those numbers are provided by the DRA, and both of those go into the formula. And we have two different pieces. So we serve at the pleasure. The budget committee will be presenting their budget on February 10th. And at some point, it's going to be an estimated tax impact that the budget committee will say to the town that this is what it is. But it really doesn't change the amount raised. And we'll see what happens. And Neil and I spent some time talking about this today, and I think we were on the same page. It really is a perception thing more than a reality. But I just wanted to make sure, as Michelle alluded to, it's not a line on the MS-27.
Thanks, Steve. And just to reiterate your point, it doesn't change the amount raised. It does change the tax rate or the projected tax rate. Right?
Projected.
Thanks. Other questions or comments from members of the budget committee? And actually, I'll just ask, I wonder if you all will allow me, I might like to hold on the vote until we hear from members of the public, or at least give members of the public an opportunity during the public comment session. We can come back to this vote toward the end of the meeting. But I do want to invite, if there's other questions or comments now, please share them. Don.
As I said last week, I'm not comfortable with this at all. I think we should stick with what the formula has been. DRA is going to set the rate, and I'm just concerned with the perception that the people who don't follow this, they look at it just at voting time and they say, "Oh, budget committee and these folks are trying to pull something over on us. They're changing from the standard. They're trying to create, in essence, the illusion of that we've got more revenue than we do." And that's a perception. And so I'm not in favor of it at all.
Thanks, Don. Thomas, and then Jonathan.
For me, this kind of goes back to something that Steve mentioned, where, I mean, this doesn't show up in the warrant articles. This isn't an official number by any means. And to me, any of these estimates are going to be wrong because we won't have the final number until the tax rate comes in. And so, I mean, I personally think that the 0.5% is even probably too low. I mean, I think that, if we're going to be looking at a projection, we should be looking at kind of a long-term projection and look at more historically what we expect the number to be over time. But I mean, at the end of the day, the difference that we're talking about, 0.5%, comes down to, it's like $40 on the median household. And it's like, that's just the estimate, that's the error. So like that the school is being conservative by about $40 per household. So I don't really see an issue either way. But I mean, again, it just doesn't show up in a warrant article anywhere. So I kind of feel like if we want to be more conservative, be more conservative. If you want to use a more accurate number, use a more accurate number.
Thanks, Thomas. Jonathan?
Yeah, I just want to follow on what Don was saying. I'm sort of in line with where he's at with this. I have a lot of concern. Obviously, the budget committee hasn't weighed in on the town and school budgets yet, but just assuming for the sake of argument that we support them as presented, I have a lot of concern with what happened last year. And I really don't want to see any variable that's going to be injected into this that people are going to misperceive or uncharitably that they may misstate. how important that is or what the motivations may be. And to me, this just seems like not helpful. So I would just say that I'm sort of where Don's at with this.
Thanks, Jonathan. And Norm.
Thanks. I also just want to echo one other thing. It would probably be more helpful if we had this discussion to start the budgeting process. Maybe if we had the information instead of doing this right before we're about to move forward in these warrants. We have more discussions, maybe more debates, more look into it, maybe do more assessment and look into things. But I just feel like doing it right now, right before we're about to do our public hearing, I think it's a little complicated and it's too much risk.
Thanks, Norm. And just to clarify, what prompted this discussion was that we had two different numbers coming in, which we didn't know about until 2 weeks ago. That's why we're having it now.
You're correct. You're right. Yeah.
I think going forward, that is, there's a lot to unpack here. I agree. Ken, you wanted to respond quickly, and then I'm going to go to Thomas.
I just wanted to say that when the town budget was presented to this committee on December 9th, it was pointed out that we were using a 1% increase to the valuation. There was no attempt to ambush. We were out front on what we were doing. And at that point, I don't believe there were any questions were raised about it. But I understand the points that the school and others are raising, and they are valid concerns. I think each individual has to decide what they think is the best way to proceed.
Thanks, Ken. And yes, no intent to impugn the town whatsoever. It's more that we didn't realize it until we heard the school budget and then realized that two different numbers were being used. So thank you. Yes, you were totally on the up and up in December. Thomas.
Oh, my hand still up?
Sorry, that was Rich. I mean, I got you guys confused. Rich.
Oh, sorry. I would not like to go forward with this if there's any disagreement. Obviously, the school and the town would see differently on this, and I don't see any reason to go forward unless everyone agrees. So I'm going to vote against this. Thanks.
Thank you, Rich. Any further comments now? Otherwise, we can table this until after we've gone through additional agenda items and also heard from the public. Steve, I know you made the motion. Are you comfortable with us tabling this for now?
Not at all.
Not at all uncomfortable.
No, I'll move to table it then.
Okay. Great. Thank you, everybody, for sharing all these really important considerations. I think that that's going to help everybody figure out where they want to land on this proposal. We're going to move on then in the agenda to the town budget update. And so back over to you, or back to you, Ken.
Okay, this time I'm better prepared.
Sorry to put you on the spot before.
No, that was appropriate. Since our last meeting, you should have received the updated select board budget pages and tax rate estimation, which is basically consistent with the presentation I made last week. The differences from last week are there's $1,000 difference in the amount of the fund balance to be used for 2021. And then there's rounding in terms of the final tax impact to bring the result down to a 4.11% increase. And this is setting the valuation issues aside for now. So I'll just very briefly repeat what I said last week that made these updates. As you remember, at our last town meeting, the select board received approval to enter into a $1.8 million road bond. In our December 9 presentation, we conservatively estimated a 1.5% interest rate. And the very good news was that it came in at 0.76%, which also means as far as the original road bond and the fire station bond, which we also refinanced as part of the package, will be saving our taxpayers $300,000 over the remaining lives of those bonds. However, in order to get the lower interest rate, the lenders required a higher payment in 2021 of $57,144 than we had included in our December 9 presentation. The other two changes taken by the select board at our last meeting were first, in terms of the amount of the fund balance to be applied to reduce the 2021 tax rate. Because the year-end 2020 revenues and expenses, while not completely final, are coming in about $50,000 better than first estimated, the select board opted to apply that $50,000 to reduce the need for tax revenues. And the select board decided to adopt the CIP's committee's recommendations. That means for the 2021 budget, there's a $40,000 reduction in appropriations. The $40,000 is a result of delaying irrigation at Park Avenue and not making an additional appropriation for dam maintenance. The net impact of all of these actions is a reduction of about $33,000 in the amount we had previously proposed for town taxes, or a reduction in the percentage increase from 4.78% to approximately 4.11%. So that's just my update.
Thank you, Ken. And Ken, I think this was touched on last week, but if the budget committee were, well, you said if the budget committee were to recommend something other than the 1% valuation increase that was included in the select board's budget, you would want the opportunity to go back and look at some of the other revenue estimates, right? And so we wouldn't know tonight necessarily the ultimate tax rate increase being proposed.
That's correct, Mark. And not knowing whether or not the budget committee is going to be meeting next week or try to finalize things tonight, I was thinking, well, what I could ask for is authority if the select board opts on Monday night to use a higher estimate for revenues from state room and meals or highway block grant or municipal aid, to incorporate that into the presentation that on behalf of the budget committee. And on that, I have had discussions offline with Neil, who again, he can speak for himself, but seems to think that now there's a better chance we'll be getting closer to 100% than maybe a couple of months ago.
Are there questions for Ken or comments? And just what we have later on in the meeting is our deliberation on the proposed budgets and whether we're comfortable voting tonight on what we want to present at the public hearing. So we'll be getting to that later in the meeting, but I do want to make sure that now, if there's questions, observations, comments for Ken, you have the opportunity to do so. Jonathan.
I just had a quick question on the capital reserve. In looking at the ambulance, it looks like we have two lines for an ambulance 2015 and ambulance 2019, two different vehicles, I assume. And under 2023, reading across the line from the 2015, we've got 333,000.
Yes.
Under 2023, and then 442 under 2033, 10 years later. I just wasn't sure how to interpret those two numbers.
I would put more faith in the more current number, the 2023 number. I think
Okay.
It's just estimating 10
Okay.
years worth of inflation.
I didn't know if it was like, are we buying like one vehicle and then 10 years later anticipating buying another one, or?
Yes.
That's the idea?
Yeah, replacing it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions or comments for Ken at this time? Great, and thank you for that update. Thank you for sending the materials out in advance. They were really helpful. Much appreciated, and to Neil as well.
Yes. Neil churns the numbers. Thank you.
He does. And let's see, we were going to go on next then to Thomas for, there's a small update in the Hopkinton Village Precinct budget. So Thomas, please.
Yeah, so there is some updates with the water board. The water board is planning on continuing with the updated project for the water maintenance. And we might have to do another bond. They're not entirely sure yet, so that hasn't been made into a warrant article yet. But because of all of the bonds that are happening with the water maintenance project, they're expecting to change the rates. So we're looking at probably about a $50 increase in the water budget for the town. So nothing major. We're expecting about a $50 increase in that line item, and then we'll have the final numbers for the presentation. But other than that, everything's the same.
Great, and Thomas, just FYI, it's a little hard to hear you. I heard you well enough, but maybe going forward, lean in.
Sorry, I'm used to having the headphones in, and it's not working. So again, quick recap. The water budget's increasing about $50 based on rate changes, but other than that, everything should be about the same, and will be about $50 less total tax raised than last year.
Great, thank you. And Deb provided everybody on the budget committee with the updated budget estimate. Is that right, Thomas?
Yes.
Yeah, that was sent out. Thank you. Any questions for Thomas? Great. Next, the Hopkinton School District financial and budget updates. Norm.
Hi. Steve, Michelle, thank you for joining me again tonight for another night of budget committee. Real quick, in your packet, you guys got the quarterly reports that Michelle gave to the board last week. It's a lengthy document if you had time to go through it. Enrollment update that Steve provided to the board last week. That was a pretty thorough document, was in your packet. If you have any questions, we're here to answer those. I want to discuss the December 2020 financial statement that Michelle submitted to the board last week. It's still important for the budget committee to know we still have another 6 months more of a budget to do in this fiscal year. Something that was very important that she brought to our attention is that additional COVID funds was $134,000 allocated to us, but we were only able to get $109,000 of it applicable for December 31st. You had to have everything in place in order to use the COVID funds, which was the end of December. It's sort of like with fire suppression for the grant. In order to use that, we had to have it implemented for December 31st to get the guaranteed grant money of $62,000. With the COVID money, we had to have things in place by December 31st. The balance of the $134,000 has to be sent back to the state by the end of this month. The school district didn't drop the ball on the 24K. Some of this was basically due to COVID by not getting these laptops in on time. We invested a lot into the technology, and we did our best to utilize this COVID relief money, but we were not able to use all of it, unfortunately, because it was not implemented for December 31st, 2020. The other thing that's good news, but we don't have any numbers. It's more like of a notification saying, hey, you guys are getting some money, but we can't tell you what. It's kind of like playing like a blind game here, but we're going to get something. Michelle notified us. We just don't know what yet. As soon as I know something, I'll let you guys know. The board will know, and hopefully it's some good news for the community, to help us out at some capacity. The state of New Hampshire, the federal government notified us of this, so that's good. The last thing is that since we're still remote, since we're still in remote learning, Meal counts continue to be low for January, and will continue until January. So with that, I'll take some questions regarding the financial statement. I want to add one other thing. We are going to unpack a little bit tonight of the unreserved fund balance and what goes in there, because as you look in your financial statement, you can see a pretty high number. And of course, we all thinking, where's that money coming from? Tonight, per request of Steve and other committee members, we're going to unpack it with a memo from Michelle and from Steve to explain why we get to that number and how that changes. We still have a lot of months left in this budget. We don't know what's going to happen with COVID. The school district is going back next week in a model, but anything can change. You know, talking to Steve, we don't know what's going to happen the next day or a week after. You know, we do our best for our students and for this community. So that is my financial update. If anyone has any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Questions for Norm? Great, thank you, Norm, for that, and thank you for the financials, Michelle and Steve, and providing that to us in advance.
So,
if it's all right, Mark, I'll walk through some documents. Norm, is that all right with you? If you can have me share the screen, I'll just walk through the packet and provide some color to the to the questions, if that's all right.
Works for me.
While you're doing that, Steve, I just want to say I thought the multiple memos that you shared with us on these various issues were extremely helpful, and I was just super grateful for you being so responsive and for the clarity that you provided in these communications.
Well, often I get to be the front guy. Michelle does all the work and I get to be in front. So it's all good. So Michelle and I are happy to answer any questions and make sure you have the information, and Norm too. I think Norm and I talk just about every day about all this fun stuff, and Michelle and I talk a few times per day. So I'm just going to run through some, provide some nuance to the documents, and hopefully that'll help. So the first one, Steve, you had asked about savings in our remote, right? We've been remote since December 11th. And so what Michelle did is she ran year to date comparisons to see where we are. So I just want to be fully transparent about this. This is preliminary because we really don't know. So far, we've saved about 10,000 in substitutes. We actually may have to hire some more people to support ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act requests. So that's fluid. Electricity, we've saved some money, but today Michelle and I talked with the leadership team. We're coming back February 1. We expect windows to be open in some of our rooms in the middle of winter. That could increase our propane and our oil usage from February and March. So again, it's fluid. We had some savings in special ed facilities. We felt because of our model, we didn't have to hire a position. We have positions in the budget next year. We're pretty sure we're going to need it next year. Instructional supplies, we've saved some. In the first student, we've also heard from first student, we've saved about $3,000 in fuel. So we're up to over 10,000 there. So that could be updated today to about 95,000. So the struggle with transportation is that we do have to keep our bus drivers salaried and on call, because if we don't, we won't be able to come back on February 1. Many companies are looking for bus drivers as we speak, and for us to be fluid, we need to make sure, and we still have lease payments, but we are working with first student, and this is all preliminary. But it's going to change, like for our athletic transportation, we reduced some of the games. It's been abbreviated seasons, but when we get to the spring and we have spring track, lacrosse, and baseball, if the board decides softball, if the board decides to go, we may actually have to double our transportation because we can only have 24 kids on a bus. So right now with basketball, it's a smaller group, but when we get to, for example, spring track, we could have 50 or 60 kids. So it's all very fluid. We do track it. Michelle does a good job, but I think these are your core savings at this point. Steve, does that help? Perfect. And we'll update this, and Norm does a great job asking us, and so in another month we can see where we're at. The second piece is Can you guys see that? Can you see the memo? I never even asked. Can you see it? You can see the memo. Sorry about that. The fund balance, and I've been doing this for 12 years, and this is an anomaly for the Hopkinton School District. There really isn't another community that monitors the fund balance and uses it so transparently about revenue for the tax rate. Most of my superintendent friends have no idea what the revenue is, what their tax rate is. They only report out expense, especially if you're in a multi-town district where the tax rates are different. Steve, they say, we don't deal with tax rate or revenue at all. We just tell what the expense is. And I push them. I'm like, what's your tax rate? Because our tax rate, anyway. So the way Michelle, and she's been doing this for a long time, and this is really about having someone with a lot of experience, but she does gross revenue. She takes a look at it as a big picture and see where we are as in expenditures. And I gave you some historical areas where we expect to see it, but we really don't know until for the audit. And this is part of the audit. So we know there's going to be professional development college courses because of where we are. We know that the board set aside money for technology and we've got grants. So there's going to be some there. We know there's going to be some utility savings. The early retirement, and Michelle and I talk about this one quite a lot, that really is a swing item. So the contract requires we fund 3. And remember, we start the budget process in October. All right, so we were required to fund 3, and we start in October. And Michelle really picks an early, a middle, and a late because each one is a different value. So if we got 3 late, that's a smaller reward. If we get 3 early, that's a larger. So it really is about her experience in doing the best she can in October, November. So this year, we had 5 apply. And the board, actually, we had a finance committee trying to unpack this and take a look where we are. If all 5 accepted, we'd be dipping into fund balance about $60,000. If only 1 accepts, we're going to have significant money out of that line available for fund balance. And we won't know until March 1st. And just so you know, Michelle and I moved that date up with Liz, I think, and Billy Jones a few years ago. It used to be April 15th, I think, Michelle. Does that sound right to you? And we maybe have to move that up some more. But so that's a swing item. So, John, I think this is your question. This isn't a perfect answer, but Michelle and I have been doing this a long time. I think we've met the fund balance projection every year. If not, it's been off by very little. And if we have to, we freeze the budget. And one year, and Michelle was right, because I said we didn't do it, but Michelle was absolutely right. We froze the budget in August of the school year. And I said, we didn't do that. And she said, Steve, we did it. And sure enough, she was right. That's because we funded, if you remember, we had a contingency fund for half of a kindergarten class, and we bought a kindergarten class in August, if you will, bought it. And that caused us to really delve into the budget. So I hope that helps, Don. I do have full faith and confidence in Michelle's estimate. We will meet the projection, and it's not the worst projection, right? If it's not, we have been higher. We've been 526, 561, 486, so we're not in the worst, we're not stretching so far that we've never been in this territory before. So I feel confident that we'll make it.
I thank you very much for digging into this. The more everybody hears about this, I think the more we understand what this is about, because it is quite complex, and you just look at the one sheet that we looked at a couple of years ago. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And
Margaret,
I can say,
please.
Just one thing, Steve. I think the biggest thing for the budget committee, is the biggest swing is the retirement. If we only have 1 person take it, you're looking at over 100,000 more added to the unreserved fund balance. So and Steve's right. When you have a window between when we approve the budget and when they decide, that's hard for us to be able to know what's going to happen when building our budget. So I wish they'd tell us faster, but it's really important people know that swing is a big impact on this.
And just a quick update, we have had 1 person withdraw the request, and we had another email digging in from a candidate who asked me 3 questions today about the process. So they are thinking about it as we speak. Everybody okay? That's your fund balance unpacked.
Actually, Steve, I'm just curious, how does food service operation fit into this?
Sure. So each year, Michelle puts money in the budget to support the food service program. And each year I cut it except for $1. So there is no funds budgeted proactively for food service in the budget. So what sustains the food service is the revenue we get from, people who buy lunches and the state national school lunch program. And this is something when I first began, we actually looked at contracting out. We met with Cafe Services. We did a study of other districts and trying to see where we are. It's a funky organization where our high school really is the only place that makes money, just because little elementary schools don't. So we have to be able to cover the deficit in food service from our fund balance, because each year we don't fund it through the budget development process. So this year, because we haven't had any, students aren't buying lunch, Michelle is being ready to make sure we have enough money to overcome that in our fund balance. So we have to cover that debt. And that's going to be larger than typical. So that's going to be an obligation to the fund balance. But as a business administrator, she recommends that we put money in the budget, but we just haven't had the space and the capacity to do that.
Can I just point out, just a reminder, since actually the financial was just passed out by Norm in the recent week. Every month when I come up with what is left, what I'm anticipating what's left for fund balance, I factor in the deficit being paid by the general fund. So on the December financial, you'll see, I think, food service having a deficit of over 300,000. That is already in the anticipated expenditure number up above in the general fund. So it's already factored in. So it's not that we have to, with the value that's on my document with what's left, cover the food service deficit. No, it's already factored in that.
Thank you for that explanation. I had thought, and because I'm thinking that's probably dangerous, that the federal government was, through the stimulus, was covering the cost for food service.
They pay a per meal, and it depends on who takes the meal, and that doesn't cover our costs related to our staffing. And so one thing to point out is we didn't hire 2 positions this year that actually we'll need when we're back in school, so that the deficit would be less. So, and this
really
isn't an anomaly to us, it's everywhere. Everywhere is going to lose money like no tomorrow, even though the government's paying for it, because it's, again, whoever takes it. We're not having the number, even though it's free, we're not having the numbers that are going to be there to support the system.
Okay.
And Michelle's monitoring of it and making sure we didn't hire the staff because we're in a smaller group is very, very important. She's done a great job monitoring expenditures and saving where we can. And one of the other pieces that some districts do, and we found this out and we studied this, our food service director's salary is in the food service budget, where some put it outside and just to make the deficit look smaller. So we try to be transparent. And I always say it takes an awful lot of tater tots to cover health insurance.
Thank you.
Everybody okay? The next piece, and I think the next 2 are related to the contract. So this was the attempt to provide the information necessary: first step, mid-step, top step, health, average, and percent of budget. And thank you to Michelle. Michelle and I worked together on this information. So just a little bit about collective bargaining and how contracts work. It is very, very difficult to cost out a comparison of Bow versus Hopkinton versus Concord versus Belmont versus Kearsarge. It's just, everybody does it different. Like there's a district, believe it or not, that has 42 steps. We have 15. That means when you have 42 steps, you're guaranteed a step increase for 42 years. We have some have 30. Now, if you look, like Merrimack Valley only has 10 steps. And so that means from years 10 to 30, what happens? Are they frozen on step 10? Well, if you read their collective bargaining agreement, to be honest, it's not particularly obvious about what they do, but they have a yearly stipend for people from years 11 through 30. And frankly, as a superintendent who does this for a living, I couldn't find that in the contract. Michelle had to call in some favors and to try to find out what happens, because it looks like, oh, someone's making 56, someone's making next to our 66, but that's not completely now. There's also nuances of longevity. There's some offer buyback of sick days. So it's very, very different. But for just a straight analysis, now, why do we pick these? Hopkinton and Bow are compared to everything, right? I mean, everybody compares Hopkinton, so that's a natural. Concord, we have lost a teacher to Concord. We have lost a teacher to Kearsarge. We have lost teachers to Hillsborough Deering. And Merrimack Valley just completed the table. We haven't lost one from Merrimack, but we thought we'd include it anyway. So we try to do it regional. So this is just a straight comparison of where you are. Now, some, like as we've talked about, by not having a contract, we've lost a step. The teachers have lost a step. Some contracts make it up, some don't make it up. We have two different salary schedules. One's if you're hired after a certain date and before a date. One's called a step schedule, some's called a rectangular schedule. So everything is a little bit different, but at least this is a straight, you can compare where you are and the average teacher salary. When I get to the next memo, I'll talk more about health insurance and how that works. Questions about just the comparison and where we are. So we pay 74% on total on personnel, and you look at a Concord and Bow, 79% of their budget is on personnel. I hope this answers the questions that people wanted to know about comparison to CBAs as they start to look whether or not to recommend a contract.
Steve, thank you for this, and Michelle. And you know, the observation that was made last week was that there may be a perception by members of the community that Hopkinton teachers are, compensated above comparable districts. That was the point that I heard raised last week, that there may be a perception out there, and I think that this information is really helpful in trying to set the record straight and ground it in actual data. The thing that's really hard, I know you're going to talk about healthcare, is to understand, like, if you're comparing Hopkinton and Concord, right? That Concord has they have higher salary, each of the three steps, considerably higher salary, but they also have a very different health insurance cost share. And so it's really hard, I think, to understand how do those two sort of net out.
It is. And the number of steps and course reimbursement and buyback on sick and longevity. And it's all right. It's very difficult.
I mean, my big takeaway was that perception is not backed up by actual data. If there's a perception that Hopkinton teachers are compensated excessively or higher than peer and nearby school districts, that the data does not support that perception.
And we do have a district in New Hampshire with an average teacher salary above 80,000. Average teacher salary above 80,000. That's a little bit different world. The 5% 15 for Concord is 5% for those experienced teachers. And at one point they said 15% for people hired at a certain date. So that was the differentiation there. And then we'll just head to health insurance a little bit. Is that okay? Everybody okay with this one? So to be completely honest, health insurance was the biggest challenge in my 12 years working with Michelle, Liz, Billy Jones, Maddie Cairns. It was the biggest challenge in negotiation. And so what happened before we got here, there was a cap, an employee cap on health insurance. So once you met that cap, all the increases beyond that were paid by the employer. And Michelle and I have looked and we've talked to UniServe agents, and we don't know of any other district that capped it on the employee side. And what happened, and health insurance has grown in my 12 years. Health insurance has become a much larger part of our budget than it was 12 years ago. It just has. I mean, Neil can speak to the same thing. It's a lot more now. And so for years, all those big increases were borne 100% by the district. And so there was a big incentive because it was going so fast, there was an incentive not to get off the cap for employees. But I think it was my third negotiations, right? The first negotiations, if those were keeping track, I became superintendent in spring of 2009. I was negotiating a contract as high school principal because the contract failed that year. And we had a special school district meeting in October, my first year as soup. And to be completely honest, that additional contract, I don't know if it got a vote. So we learned very well that it's very difficult to have a special meeting. So I negotiated one contract, then the next contract, and the third contract, because we had to get something passed. The board greatest objective was to get off the cap. And we did. We accomplished getting off the cap and got to a flat premium share. And that was a very, very difficult negotiation. It was very strong by the board and said, we will not agree to a contract. We're getting off the cap. We got off the cap and the union cooperated and we went to a share. And so that was here. See, here was the cap. Can you see that? The 900? Mm-hmm. And then this is where we went to a Matthew Thornton 5% and 8% share. And that was better because now the increases were shared between the employer. And now meanwhile, because many districts didn't start with a cap, while we were getting to 5 to 8, they were getting to 80/20s. They were about they were a contract or two ahead of us. And then this year, 16-17, we got hit with, I think, a 14% increase to the GMR, and it was just crazy big. And to the HEA's credit, they willingly reopened negotiations in intermittent, which means before the contract was up. They knew it was not sustainable. And they voluntarily reopened the contract and renegotiated before the end of their earlier contract. And we spent, again, that was health insurance. So, and as well, so other districts had moved, were a little ahead of us, had moved to site of service. And the difference between an HMO and the site of service deductible is a big change. And the way you incentivized employees to do this was to pay the premium because you still saved significant amount of money. And that's what districts did. And they say they took the money, it's called taking the money out of the plan as opposed to out of the employee's salary or out of the employer tax. So we moved to a site of service, and I presented to the budget committee that year about that plan. So what happens is in our district, the district pays on the site of service. That means you can buy the HMO, but the cost difference between the HMO and the site of service, the employee owns 100% of that increase in fee. And that's a couple of $1,000s for a family. So for example, we had someone who had cancer, and that person lived through a tragedy and a trauma piece and developed a relationship with their doctors, and they paid the higher premium to make sure that they could have the same health insurance access, same everything, because it was so important to them, but they picked up that fee. So they still have that opportunity, but the district doesn't pay any more if you choose the HMO. It just stays the same on the site of service. So when we went to the site of service, and if you can compare it, so it was $813 for a single. It's still more expensive than what we're paying as the site of service. We're still saving money from that decision. And the site of service is called consumer-based healthcare. What does that mean? Like, and Neil and I talk all the time. So Neil, with Neil's health insurance, he can go to Hitchcock and he can walk downstairs and take blood the same day. And it doesn't cost him another cent. If I went to Hitchcock and went downstairs to take blood, I'm paying money out of the deductible, and it's going to cost the district about $300 more than what if I go to Quest. I go to Quest, it's free to me, and it saves the district money. So it's more inconvenient. I mean, Neil might like me. Neil, I actually like Quest because there's no lines, and I'm an anti-line guy. But I have to go to a certain vendor that is the site of a service that Anthem has negotiated with in Mass to have the best price. I have to go to Concord Orth. My daughter had a stress fracture in her back. We could only go one place. We and have the cost. Otherwise, I have to pay out of pocket. And we went to Concord Ortho. That's the site of service. And then we pay we have a $3,000 deductible. The first $1,500 is paid by the district. The second $1,500 is paid by my family if we utilize it. What I really like about this is the HRA is notional. So what that means, like this year, we haven't, my knock on wood, who's ever got wood out there, we haven't used much of our deductible. So if we stay healthy, then that money unused goes back to the district and revenue increases. So, and I apologize, I didn't communicate well with Neil. The town piece, this is actually next year. This is next year's rate. But even at 90-10, apples to apples, paying the premium on an HMO 90-10 is more expensive than the school district paying 100% of the site of service premium. The plan choice is very important, but I know the optics of 100% premium is very difficult for people to get. And I don't know if anybody remembers when we lost the gym floor at the high school and we had to have the school district meeting in the auditorium. That was the year we switched. And after that meeting, the meeting got over like at 11:30. It was a quick one because that was a negative warrant article on the teacher's contract. Michelle, remember that? It was actually we saved money by passing that contract. It's right after that meeting, a community member I've known for 10 years, I had a kid came up to me and said, Steve, 100% is terrible. I said, but it's cheaper than 90% of the HMO. Steve, 100%. From that day, we've struggled with that optics of. And last year, we did the graduated cost share in the site of service, but of course it didn't pass. So that's the journey. It's been a very difficult journey to handle health insurance in the district, but we've made incredible progress. Getting rid of the cap, moving to a consumer-based plan, and continually saving money because it's really a very little inconvenience for me to go to Quest. It's very little inconvenience to go to Concord Ortho. To be honest with you, when we had my daughter's stress fracture in her back, I think she had 2 doctors from Hopkinton, so it worked pretty well at Concord Ortho. They took good care of her. So that's the journey. There's more work to do for the next superintendent and the next negotiating team. But I'm proud of the work with the HEA and the board in moving health insurance to a more affordable plan for the community. Does that help on health insurance?
Steve, I do have a question for you. It's okay. If you could jump back 2 slides, I think it was your slide 4.
Yes.
Your comparisons.
Yes.
So as we, I think the thing that I'm trying to get my head around is that health insurance share line.
Yes.
If you look below that, we can see sort of average teacher salaries in comparisons. And I think that very much goes to Mark's point in terms of where we fall. But of course, what we pay out in health insurance is part of wages, right? Like that's part of compensation. And so those percentage numbers are hard for me to understand. And maybe it's impossible to say, maybe what I'm asking is impossible to say, but like, do we have any sense as to like what the 0% to 3% for Bow to 5% for Concord, like what that sort of roughly equates in terms of wages paid out to the average teacher? Like, because really like compensation would be sort of that health insurance 0 line and then the average teacher's salary line. So like, you know, what the dollar sort of, even just ballpark, but just to understand that a little bit in terms of what's paid out.
Sure. So
I don't know if that question makes sense, but that's what I'm sort of trying to understand.
So if like a family's 22 grand, Bo's playing 660 bucks for a
Okay.
family plan, ish, right? We're just doing issues.
Yeah,
And I know Michelle hates my issues and a lot of people hate my issues, but
I'm inviting your issues.
so there's a difference. It's like 660 bucks for about a $22,000 family plan. Now, Bo also moved to the next level of consumer-based and owning it, where they went to a higher deductible, but they self-insured the first $5,000, which is more personnel and which is so. But that's the next iteration, Jonathan. That's the next stage. We're right where we are, where other districts were. They just got ahead of us because we were capped for 4 years, and fighting off the cap was very, very difficult. So we're just behind a little bit, but it's in the 5%, 15%. So they have school care, so they have Cigna, which is different than Blue Cross, which means the plan is different. And I don't know if it is a site of service or versus an HMO. And if it's an HMO, they're spending more money than we are because we got people to a site of service. So it's very difficult to take a deep analysis.
Yeah. Can I just point out one other thing?
Sure,
so the other thing is that because we do talk to other communities, before Bo changed to the new consumer plan they had, they were on a similar plan, the same plan that we are now, right? Their premium was higher than Hopkinton's premium.
Right.
So even though it says on here 3%, I mean, that's another unfortunate thing because of the fact of it takes into effect people's history of uses. So that's even kind of another anomaly that you can't even equate.
And I'll tell you sort of what, where my question comes from is, over the years, we hear people sort of, I've heard some public comment where people sort of question that, that 0%, it's too, it's too much, and so just trying to understand how to answer that question is sort of where I'm coming from in my mind, because that's how I'm looking at this overall slide. It's very helpful in answering that question Mark sort of pointed out.
And I would say that my answer when people come up to me, I said, we moved to a cheaper plan. We saved hundreds of thousands of dollars over the last 4 years. And in order to do that, we did 100%. Now, our attorney, just to be honest, our attorney who supports negotiation, who helps us, his advice is to keep the 100%, because when you pay 100%, usage goes down. When you start paying, I'm not saying I buy this, but in some districts that he's going, when you pay out of your pocket for premium, people say, I'm going to get my money's worth and I'm going to go but that was, Michelle can tell you, that was his advice. And we believe a cost share is appropriate. The board wants to get to a comparable cost share and was moving there last year, got disrupted. But like I said, there's more work to do, but we're not negligent. We are fulfilling our fiduciary responsibility in putting forth a plan that has deep savings for this community, even with 100% optic.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, I have a quick question. Can you go back to the health insurance thing real quick?
This one?
So just to make sure I understand this correctly. So if we did not, no, zoom out, please. Okay. So if we had never have gone back to negotiations with them back in 2018 and change over the health plan, is it understandable that we would be paying $386 today instead of the $727 the SOS? Is that correct? Is that the history law? Is that the history of the premiums versus?
Well, I guess Michelle can speak to it, but I think this is the new HMO cost, right? $2,600, Michelle?
Yes.
Norm, it would be $700 more per family, but say even if we did 10% of that, take 260 off, it would be $500 more per family. If we did
and that's
10%
per month.
And that's per month. So that's $6,000, even with a 90-10 cost share. And I'm sorry about that HMS. That should have been HMO. That's my fault.
No, that's fine.
Because it's not Harold Martin School. It's not Harold Martin. So that's the piece. And Jonathan, that's where it was. If we kept the HMO, it would be $6,000 a year. And I know it's not perfect, and we want to move to a cost share and continue our consumerism because that's what's best. It's better that I go to Quest. That's better for the town. It's better for everybody. I don't mind going to Quest. It's the least I can do when this community, people work really hard to keep their kids in this community. So I get it, but it looks worse. I guess I'm not trying to be, it just looks worse than it is because we're in a consumer-based, program.
I think people forget what we had to do in order to get through a budget. In order to get through each one, we had to make changes in the health insurance to save the district money, to have that flexibility to continue to grow. And of course, Steve's right. The board understands that this community wants to be able to see something change in the cost share down the road, in which I think the board's doing a great job doing that in negotiations. And I hope that continues to happen.
And Jim and Andrea absolutely believe in this. They want to do this. They work really hard. We appreciated Scott and his team coming to agreement. It was a complicated year because we had to negotiate all the MOUs regarding how to have school in a pandemic. And then by the time we got to this, I think we had basically a month. And to negotiate cost savings in healthcare and costing out a fair approach takes longer than a month. It just does. Everybody okay?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. First, thank you, Steve, for this explanation. And for everybody's information, when the school first went to this different approach, the select board wanted to just look at it and see how it was working out for a couple of years, and then the pandemic hit. So this spring, we will be doing a deep dive looking at whether or not this approach makes more sense than where the town employees are right now. So I thank you for breaking ground on this. I also just wanted to point out where in the column you have the town HMO costs. I'm going to say for single it's 988. That's the 100%. The town person individual on single would be 890, and that's for next year. So there's a little bit of apples and oranges there. But overall, I agree. I think you're doing a real good job on what you're doing on healthcare.
And there's more work to do. And I think the team is situated, and I think everybody knows that. But there was, I don't want to say that the teams in the last 10, 12 years didn't do good work in this area. I wouldn't be representing the teams well if I didn't make that clear. Everybody okay? Just to run through a quick, that was the most, Norm already talked about this. This is where we get the number, and this is where we get this. I thought there was a swept on there. Here's the swept valuation. So we use 2 evaluations, but you already talked about that, Mark. You're good there. This is what we gave this to you to vote, to do your tally by tally. You have to weigh in on all of them, not Article 1. You don't have to vote on Article 1, Mark, if you don't want to. But we need a vote on all of them, right, Michelle?
Just the money ones, but I mean,
you don't have to do Article 9, and Article 1. But that's what you just when you're ready to go through, and then Norm, if you need the number, no, the number's right there in Article 2. Beautiful, Michelle. So you're all set. And then
Steve,
the last one.
Steve, if I could interject for a moment, sorry. Yes. I was going through this. I just want to make sure that we are clear. The articles that I think we need to vote on are Article 2.
Yes.
Article 3.
Yes.
Article 7 and 8. And I was unsure about whether we need to vote on Article 6.
I believe because there's money, because that could go to the tax, that would go to fund balance if we didn't have this article. That I believe that it is one. Honestly, I mean, one could say that Article 5, even though there's no dollar, it is somewhat of a fiscal
right. We would like you to weigh in Mine.
So, but usually it is the dollar amount ones.
Yeah, and both of those
Okay.
have to do with money. It's just not it. And if you wouldn't mind weighing in on increasing the, we really do value the budget committee support very much. We really do.
Okay,
Or I should say your
thank you for
opinion.
that clarification. So Articles 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Perfect.
Okay.
I lost track. No, sure.
We'll come back to it, but yeah,
Where
I got
are
it.
these?
Thank you.
And then Michelle wanted to make sure you just had a copy of the MS-27. And Michelle, you fill this out for them after the public hearing, right?
Right.
Does this go to the public hearing? No, do we?
No, well, I usually print it out or have it printed.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was the packet for tonight. Everybody okay? And then I probably talked too much. I apologize for all those words, and I'll let you get back to it.
All right, Steve, why don't you stop sharing your screen?
Well, there it is. It was hidden. There you go.
And definitely don't apologize. That was great and very informative. I wish there were more members of the public listening in because it was very enlightening. Are there any further questions for Steve or Michelle or Norm at this time? Our next agenda item is to invite public comment, and then we'll talk more about the next steps on these budgets. And Norm, you're good for now?
I am good. Thank you, guys.
Okay, great. So we are going to open the meeting up for public comment. And so if you are a member of the public and you want to offer some comments, again, I just want to remind folks either tonight or next week, the Budget Committee will be voting on what numbers we want to put forward at the public hearing, either to agree with the numbers that have been put forth by the school, the town, and the districts, or to propose something else. So we welcome your input. If you want to provide comment, raise a question, please click on the participants button and click raise your hand, and we will unmute you. Friends, Neil, I think since you're still here, you're the meeting host, so you'll see, I guess. I can't see if anyone's raised their hand.
I'm not seeing any at this point. Oh, here is one.
Bob Matteo.
Hello, everyone. Hey, I just want to, commend Steve and all the work done here, Michelle, Norm. Great information. One of the things I was trying to understand in that those last sections, and I thought Jonathan was kind of asking that question, was do we know? Well, I guess it's a two-part question. On the health insurance, and we see the numbers here, and Steve kind of relaying where we came from on a history level to where we got to today. And so some of those numbers might not, they may look a little different. Do we have an actual, is there a way to compare the, I don't know, I'm trying to word this the right way. The outlay or the amount provided per teacher, meaning with the health charts, the actual, to kind of put this in comparatively to where the others are. And was that done, or did I miss that in that other slide? I saw the comparison to the town, and I was curious to see if you took out the percentage and you left those numbers in. If you left totals in to the health share instead of putting 0, 3, 5, 15, and there were actual numbers associated with the actual outlay, maybe a total or per average. And the
Yeah, I
other,
know.
sorry, go ahead.
Bob, no, I appreciate that. I don't think Michelle and I are able to get specific rates for towns. We got, years ago, we tried, as Michelle said, where we got some, and we can find out. So we got similar district rates than ours, but not necessarily, I think, so I don't know if I can get Concord actually uses a whole different insurance company. So I don't know if we can get exactly the premium and how much they are paying per thing. I mean, we can try. I just don't know. We tried once.
All we can do
So-
is reach out to the, I can reach out to the BA to see if they were willing to give that information, I guess. But, and then also take into context what type of plan it is as well, because just in the analogy of the town versus the school, it could be the same thing with another school that we're comparing to, that they're actually on an HMO and not a site of service.
Right, and I appreciate that, and that's understood. And I was wondering that question. As I was asking it, if that's even possible to get that information.
I don't know.
Just don't know. And I thought that may be a good way to look at it as a whole, to say, this is the concrete number that we're spending for health insurance at the end of the day, and this is where we rank at the end of the day. And it, like you said, it may not be, it may be something that can be get. This is fantastic, by the way, what's here. The other question I had in relation to that was, is that health insurance cost, I guess if we can't get that, is that rolled into the percentage of the personnel budget, the last one at the bottom? Does that cover that as well, that cost? That's 74% for us.
The 74% is based on what I'm thinking of what we're going to have for people that are choosing either the health buyout or health insurance. So
yes.
So it does, but it's not, you know, what could throw it off, for instance, is I guess that a new person that's coming in next year takes the insurance, but they don't take the insurance. But that is the value of health and retirement and all that personnel cost.
Awesome. Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Again, that's great info. That's great. That's all I have for tonight, guys. It's very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome, Bob.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, if there's other members of the public who have any comments or questions, please use the raise hand function. We'll give it a few secs here. Quiet crowd. Steve, you either answered everything or you put everyone to sleep. I don't know. I think you answered
Probably
everything.
The latter, I always get mixed up. Former is first and latter second.
Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. So Neil, do you? Okay. Then I think we will close the public comment session and return to the agenda. So, and Janet, I will invite you to help me with this as a veteran chair of the budget committee. But you know, our task is to convene and lead a public hearing on the draft budgets and budget-related warrant articles, which we'll be doing on February 10th, 2 weeks from today. And our responsibility as the budget committee is to determine what budgets we're going to recommend. And so this is an important time for us to signal either our concurrence with the budgets and the associated warrant articles that have been put forward, or to decide that we are not in concurrence, and then those bodies need to determine what to do with that, if they want to try to go back to the drawing board or present a different number. So this is really, I think we will need to go through these one by one. And Janet, I feel like your tactic was often to go from easier to harder.
Yes.
And so we could start, and actually before we jump into the individual ones, I just want to maybe open up for kind of higher level budget committee conversations. Just anything that folks want the budget committee to have in mind as we enter these conversations on a budget by budget basis. And like, for example, Don, you've often provided us with some overall estimates of total tax rate increases when you added everything up together. So let me just pause and see if anybody has any overarching comments or thoughts or information that you want to share at this time. And I just want to acknowledge it's kind of hard to do this over Zoom. So I'm trying to keep my eye on everybody on the screen.
Can it be anybody?
That could be anybody.
I'll go.
Oh yeah, I was just singling out Don as someone who has often done that. Go ahead, Norm, please.
No, I really want to say thank you to the budget committee over the last couple of months. One of the goals of joining the budget committee was to really a breath of fresh air of communication between the board and the budget committee. When I joined here, I understood that we wanted to discuss a new budget format, open discussion, how we can really bring this forward to you all. This is a realistic budget from the school board, and from the school district, this is what it takes to meet the needs of our students. And one thing that's really important to me as a board member is that this budget that we have set forth tonight gives us an opportunity to meet those students' needs when we come back, hopefully from this pandemic. They can enjoy field trips. They can enjoy having middle school sports, having coaches. They can enjoy having extra activities. They can enjoy having classes that we can provide to them. We have to be concerned with their physical and mental health coming back, because they don't know how school is going to be like when they come back. The reality of this budget is, we do have a shortfall of 8%. I'm sorry, shortfall 800,000 from the state. And one thing that's really important is that we have to continue to look as a board and continue to communicate this budget to the community. One thing that was really important that the board said that's a tall task for us is to communicate this to the community. We have vowed at our last meeting that me, Rob, Steve, Michelle, we're going to get together at a finance committee meeting, find a way to communicate this budget to the community, because it means a lot. I wish I was in town hall with you guys. That's one thing I did not have an opportunity to do this year. But as a board member, I'm very happy that we had this great open discussion. Thank you to Steve and Michelle for all your help and support, and to the board for giving us the opportunity to present you with a realistic budget.
Thank you, Norm. Other thoughts at this time, kind of high level? I think then we'll start first with the picking back up the first conversation about overall assessment valuation for use in budgeting. And I guess, Ken, I think I want to start with you, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, and you can take yourself off the spot, but just given the conversation that you heard, and I know you can't decide this unilaterally, would you like this budget committee to vote on whether or not to accept what's currently in the, to endorse what's in the existing select board budget? Would you like us to vote on, I guess, sticking with a more traditional approach, or somewhere in between?
Yeah, I'm just speaking for myself, not for the rest of the select board, which is a problem. And I keep going back to saying that we were trying to look at not just the valuation, but at the same time, the reductions in the state revenues in different categories. And I'd be from my viewpoint, I'd be willing to say, okay, I'll agree with using no increase. But I'd like the ability to go back to the rest of the select board to see if they would support increasing the percentage for room and meals and highway. And if that is increased from, say, 80 to 90%, it's a fairly de minimis impact on the tax rate.
Great, thanks, Ken. Thomas?
Is there, so if the purpose of the calculation of the tax rate is really just for the presentation, is there any reason why the budget committee doesn't just do their own calculation to present?
Are you asking me, Thomas?
It's up to, I mean, I guess it's more for everybody. I mean, I maybe it just hasn't historically been done, but I mean, if that seems like a perfect job for the budget committee to determine what the projected tax rate impact is going to be next year. And I know that currently the select board does it, and the school board also does it, but they do it differently. Is there any reason why the budget committee just doesn't come up with what their expected tax rate's going to be next year?
Well, what is to be presented in 2 weeks is the budget committee's budget, which would include the tax rate.
Right. But like, so right now, the expected tax rate that is going to be being presented is part of it's going to be calculated by the school board, and part of it's going to be calculated by the select board. So, I mean, is there any reason why we don't just come up with our own number to present?
Well, I think that's what Mark is pushing towards, is to get a number for valuation to be used by both entities, and to create that kind of a uniformity. And I think that makes sense.
Are you talking, I mean, Thomas, I want to make sure I'm following you. I mean,
Well, yes,
I think that our number, we rely on the school and the town to run all the numbers. And the only thing in play here that I think our influence is ultimately what number, what budget expenditure are we recommending to the town?
Right.
And that budget, and basically the methodology of that is going to influence what the projected tax rate is. So I don't want to have to go rerun all the numbers, I guess. So that's where I'm a little bit confused about what you're recommending. What I want to do is reconcile and make sure that everyone's using the same valuation, and then we can decide whether we support their budgets.
So I think what I'm saying is that, I mean, there's a lot of other factors. I think like what Ken is saying is that there's a lot of other factors beyond just the town valuation. There's also the revenue projections on the school side. There's the 97% versus the 100% state aid coming in. There's all these other numbers that are coming in. And is there any reason why we're not just doing our own calculation on all of these numbers to come up with a projected tax impact? Because it's way more than just the
right. Well, I think so, I mean, the reason that I'm focused on this one is this is the one that both the school and the town use, right? They both, all the other revenue sources that each of them use are unique to each one of them.
Right.
And so, I mean, we could do that. I don't feel like I have the information to, sort of weigh in beyond what the expertise of Steve and Michelle and Neil is on their projected revenue sources, but I'm focused on this one because it's the one that both use.
Yep. Right.
And it should, in my mind, it should be the same, but that's just my opinion. Don.
Yeah, I think we should keep with the common denominator, which is what we've been used in the past, and that both the school and the town and the precincts use it. It's a division of revenue number that is used as the base, and to introduce something else, I think just adds unbelievable amounts of confusion.
So Steve, I know that you put this only partly because I invited you, it. So I want to ask if you would like to, either because you believe that we should use the 0.5% number, or just to formally get the budget committee on record. Do you want to put forward that motion or a different motion or no motion?
Personally, I feel that it's unrealistic not to use the highest defensible number. But that's obviously not the consensus of the budget committee. So I'm willing to withdraw the motion.
That are near my chair.
So I think it is important that we give some guidance to, if we're asking the select board to change, I think we need to have that guidance reflected in a vote of the budget committee. And so I guess I will ask if someone would be willing to make a motion, and I'll try to get the wording right, that the budget committee recommends the use by all bodies of the 2020, state approved 2020 assessment valuation for budgeting purposes. So would someone be willing to make that motion?
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Amy, did you get that motion? Hold on, you're on mute. Oh, now you're off. Now you're off camera. Do you want me to repeat it? Just nod yes if you want me to repeat it. Okay. The budget committee recommends the use of the state-approved 2020 assessment valuation for use in budgeting and tax rate projections. Are there further comments that people want to offer on this before we vote? Okay, I'm going to take a roll call vote here. And I'm going to start with you, Don.
Don Houston, yes.
Janet.
Janet, yes.
Thomas.
Thomas, no.
Jonathan.
I'm a little torn, honestly. I think I'll vote no.
Jenny.
I vote yes. I think they should be consistent.
Ken.
No.
Norm.
Yes.
Steve. Can't hear you, Steve.
Steve Reddy, no.
Rich.
Rich Houston, yes.
And I am voting no. I actually don't know what the tally is, Tammy, so I'm going to ask you to tell us what the tally is.
It's even.
Is it 5-5? Okay. So I'm not an expert in Robert Rules of Order, but I'm going to say the motion does not pass at 5-5.
To push, the House wins.
Let me just ask for some further, I'll share why I voted no and maybe just open up for a little further conversation, and then, we will see where we go from here. So I really appreciate, I think the notes of caution that have been raised. And I guess, to me, and Norm, you said something that kind of registered with me, which is you want something that you feel you can justify and defend when presenting to the public. And I think there's all sorts of, this is not a revenue source, but there are all sorts of things that affect this budget, revenue sources, projections that are estimates. And for all of them, we're using the best available information that we have at the time. And to me, the best available information that we have right now suggests that our assessed valuation is going to go up. from all the information. Now, it is a break from past practice, and so that really weighs on me. And it weighs on me that it's not as conservative as traditional practice has been. And I can see how it could be a slippery slope. So that's really what's holding me back. But if we're using the best available information in all sorts of lines of this budget, of all these budgets, to me, the best available information that Neil has shared with us on the number of building permits, the number of remodels and renovations suggests that the assessment is going to go up. So I'm comfortable with it. I'm comfortable without it too. If it's 0%, I think that's perfectly defensible. It's what we've always done. And if it was 0.5%, I think that's also perfectly defensible because we have information and data that we're basing it on. I probably wouldn't be comfortable going above 0.5% myself, because then I think I would worry that we'd be putting ourselves at some risk. So that's why I voted no, and it wasn't a strong no.
I'd be uncomfortable making the motion, but I'd suggest somebody make a motion for a 0.5% increase. As sort of the compromise that we seem to think that is certainly attainable.
Well, let me ask if anybody would like to make a motion for, I guess the motion would be to use the state of 2020 approved assessment valuation plus 0.5% for use in budgeting and tax rate projections. Would anybody like to make that motion?
I'm willing to make the motion, but unless somebody's going to change their vote from what we just saw, I'm not sure that it's going to do any good. Is there more research or something else that needs to be done at this point? Or?
Why don't you make the motion, Steve, and we'll see if there's a second, and then we can open it up for some conversation.
Sure. Then I move that we use the additional 0.5% on top of the existing valuation.
I'll second that.
Thomas, second. Okay. So let me just ask, Steve, you asked a question, which is there any additional information that anyone would love to have in order to inform your vote? And let me just ask if there's any other comments on this proposal. Thomas.
I mean, I'm still on even at 0.5%, I'm still on the fence. I think that, I mean, if you look back over long scales of time, the average is closer to 4%. And I know that we don't hit that until reevaluation years. And it's kind of this step change every 4 or 5 years. But even the 0.5% seems a little bit too conservative. And I think it's good to go with the more conservative. I mean, it's better to go with the more conservative number. I think the bigger problem that I have is I don't feel like the tax rate is necessarily a good metric to base whether or not the budget is sound or not off of. And I think that there's a lot of focus on that. And this type of thing kind of hinders that. But I think that, 0.5% certainly gets us closer to what is a more accurate representation of what the numbers will be. And I think that your point was good, Mark, that part of the purpose of this is to if the school wants to be more conservative because they want to have a defensible number, and this allows them to have a more accurate defensible number and for them to have a reason behind it, then I think that's a valuable thing.
Further comments? Okay, I'm going to call this vote. We'll see what happens, and then we'll take it from there.
Wait, can I ask a question?
Oh, yes, please.
Would anybody that voted no be in favor of a 1% increase, or of using the town's version of a 1%, or is that kind of going too far?
Okay, so that's maybe just people can wave their hands if you are. Can you see everybody, Thomas? Or you can speak up if anybody feels like we should go up to the 1%.
Did we decide that they have to be the same? I mean, is that the consensus? That the existing method is not like, did we make that decision?
That's a good question. I thought that I thought I informally polled the group and there was a lot of nodding heads last week, but I don't know that we took a formal vote on that, Jonathan. We did not take a formal vote on it. So we can ask that question before we proceed with this vote. And is that something that you would like us to do?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on how people vote, right? I mean, it just, I guess I'm just raising the issue that it didn't, that I didn't think that we'd all decided that the existing, that the fact that the two bodies have used different rates, that's not necessarily, we haven't decided that that's a problem that needs fixing. Maybe there's consensus that it is, but I just, seems like that would be the first thing to decide.
Okay, so I'm gonna just poll everyone right now. This is not a vote. I don't think that needs to be in the form of a motion. Well, maybe it does. Janet, I'm going to ask you with your wisdom here. Do you think we should have a motion on this particular question?
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of division amongst the group. And I know I voted, but I'm against doing this completely. I think we should go with the assessed value and not add anything in for new construction or revamping old houses and so forth. So,
right.
And I think if you use a percentage, you're going to have trouble anyway, because there's some that might want more and want others that want less. But I'm against it, period.
And Janet, if I could, while since you're talking, do you feel that it is important for both the town and the school to use the same number? Because I think that's the question Jonathan is raising.
I believe so, yes. If they're going to use a figure, yes.
Okay, I'm just going to go around and ask people if that's okay and continue, Jonathan, with your Don, do you believe the town and the school should use the same number, or would you be comfortable with them using different numbers?
I think they absolutely should use the same number. That's just adding another layer of confusion, and I see no benefit in it.
Okay. Ken?
I'm hesitating because what the budget committee has to vote on for warrant articles does not include this as a warrant article. Where it only shows up is in the final tax rate that I don't think the budget committee is voting on. But that said, I definitely prefer that both the school and the town use the same valuation.
Thanks, Ken. And that's a good point. Ginny?
I agree with Ken. I do think that they should both use the same evaluation. And this was really brought to our attention late in the game. If we think that, or we agree that they could use different ones, or we should use the higher 1%, that should be something that should be decided at the beginning of the budgeting year, not at the end. So I think that they should both be the same. Whatever the outcome is, they should both be the same.
Thanks, Ginny. And Jonathan?
Yeah, I guess I think as a philosophical matter, it would be better to use the same. I think as a procedural issue, my understanding is that it's sort of always been done this way, that this is, so it seems to me that just as an issue of notice, it would be better to give this direction for the next budgeting year rather than trying to get everybody to go and one or the other is going to have to make a change. So I guess that's where my head is at with this.
Great, thank you. Thomas?
I'm kind of split, similar to Jonathan Cohen. I think that it would be simpler for everybody if they're the same number. But I think that, to me, the projected tax rate is almost more of like a sales figure. And if you want to use a more conservative one, or if you want to use a more beneficial one, it's kind of, I would be more in favor of us coming up with.
Thomas, I can't hear you. Can you talk closer?
Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I kind of agree with Jonathan that I think it would be a lot simpler if everyone used the same number. But to me, it's more of a sales figure, where if you want to use a more conservative one, or if you want to use a more beneficial one, I would be more in favor of us coming as a budget committee coming up with our own projections to then check against those. But I'm really torn, and I'd probably say no.
Thanks, Thomas. Norm?
I would like us to use the same number, but I would only defer to what the school board recommended, which was the 780,000. So, I mean, I wouldn't go, if you guys agreed on a 5%, or I would disagree, I would just a 0.5%, I would disagree with that. So it's it's how the motion's worded. I would like it, but then I don't want to be tied into a yes comment, a yes, if you guys decide to do a 1% or 0.5%. Does that make sense?
I think so.
So if you guys say yes, if you guys both want to use the same one, that's fine. I like the idea, but I can't vote in favor of an increase in what the board's, okay, all right.
Steve, ready?
Numbers should be the same.
You get the award for succinct. Rich?
The numbers should be the same. I want an award too.
I'll just share. I think that the numbers should be the same, because I just think it's for two reasons. One is, I know from the years on the budget committee that the tax rate impact, the optics and reality of it, do inform members of the budget committee and how they vote on these budgets, and they inform the public on how members of the public perceive and vote on the budgets, rightly or wrongly, and I just think it's fundamentally a disservice to people in our community who have a hard enough time, frankly, following all the details in these budgets and the impacts to have two different valuations used. So all that said, I think that people provide some really good input here. I'm going to call the question on the 0.5% and say, if that is approved, then that will be the budget committee's recommendation to the town and the school. If that motion does not pass, then I think the town and the school are essentially free to continue down the path that you're already on, if you so choose, because the budget committee will not have given you a guidance to do anything otherwise. And which is okay, because that's what some of the folks in the budget committee are comfortable with anyway. So the motion on the table was to recommend the use of the 2020 state approved assessment valuation plus 0.5% for use in budgeting and tax rate projections. Is it okay if I call the question? Just wave your hand if you're not okay with that right now. I got a thumbs up. Janet, you're okay with that, or you're not okay with that? Okay, all right. Don, so if you're in favor, it's an aye of that 0.5%. If you're not in favor, it's a nay.
Did we get a second to that vote?
Did we get a second? I think we did.
Yeah,
Thomas seconded
I
it.
seconded it.
Okay, Don.
No.
Janet?
No.
Thomas?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Ginny?
Whoa. Yes.
Is that a whoa or a no?
A whoa.
Whoa and a yes, okay. Ken,
I'm going to abstain. I can't vote against something the select board voted
I
for.
understand. Okay. Norm,
No.
Steve,
Steve Reddy, yes.
Rich,
No.
and I'm going to vote yes. Where does that add up to? I'm not keeping track.
2, 3, that's 4 no, 1 abstained, and 5 yes.
Okay, well, I mean, I think that it's clearly, we do not have consensus on this, and it's understandable. This is a judgment and something that I think you can easily justify wherever you landed on this topic. So we have given some guidance, and that guidance, for what it's worth, we should be clear, is to use a figure that is different than both the school board and the town have used to date. You all, Ken and Norm et al, will have to determine whether you want to heed that guidance or not. Ultimately, we're going to, we still have to vote on your budgets, not on your tax rate, on your tax assessment valuation. So you can bring this back to your respective boards. I'm sure you can capture the nature of the conversation accurately. So we're going to move on now and talk about the specific budgets. And I think we're just going to go budget by budget and warrant article by warrant article. So Thomas, would it be okay if I started with you with the Hopkinton precinct budget? And if you have it, if you could state what the warrant article, or I think maybe in your case, it's just the proposed budget because it's not going to be on the warrant.
Yeah.
Just read the total budget, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. And is it, again, I don't believe this has the updated $50 water value. Is it going to be a problem if this changes in the final MS 737?
No, because we're going to re-vote on this after the public hearing anyway. And it reminds me, I was emailing Neil about this today. Normally what happens is that we have to sign the various budget documents that are required by the state, which we do after the public hearing. Neil and I are going to figure out how we're going to do that since we're meeting remotely. And so we will circle back to the committee either. Yeah, so we're going to have to figure out if we can do electronic signatures or what will be required. And we'll report out to you as soon as Neil has some guidance for us on that front. But anyway, Thomas, yeah, I think it's fine. We will have to re-vote on this after the public hearing anyway.
Well, then excuse me if I get the language wrong, but I would like to make a motion that the budget committee accepts the 2021 Hopkinton Village precinct budget of $26,019 with an estimated $17,696 to be raised by taxes.
Second.
Is there any discussion on Thomas's motion?
Could he say those numbers again, please?
So that's a total budget of $26,019 and an estimated $17,696 in taxes to be raised. Sorry, that doesn't include the water budget. Can I restate it? Sorry.
Please go right ahead.
This always happens. All right, so to restate, I would like to propose that the budget committee accept the 2021 Hopkinton precinct total appropriations of $304,747 with a total tax to be raised of $17,696.
Great, thank you. And whoever seconded it, could you second it again?
I second that. Steve Reddy.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, Janet, did you hear it that time? Are you good?
I did. Thank you.
Any conversation about the Hopkinton Village precinct budget proposal?
Nope.
Okay, I'm going to do a quick roll call vote then. Don,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Ginny. Couldn't hear you, Ginny.
Yes.
Thank you. Jonathan,
Yes.
Thomas. Couldn't hear you either.
Oh, yes.
Steve,
Steve Reddy, yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Norm,
Yes.
and Mark is a yes. Thank you, Thomas. Okay, Don, let's go to the Kentucook Village precinct.
Okay, I had to step out to get my papers. Should I start with just the basic total appropriation? Start with that one? Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I have not full
Sorry.
page.
Total appropriations recommended, like your approval for 492,221 as total appropriations recommended.
One more time. 492.
492,221.
Thank you.
Do you want me to?
Is there more that you want to put into the motion to approve, or do you want to do it sort of piece by piece, Don?
Well, I can put in the estimated amount of taxes to be raised is 278,171.
Thank you. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Ken seconded it. Any discussion on the Kentucook precinct budget? Okay, let's do the round robin. I'm going to switch. I'm going to go in reverse this time just to mix it up and keep you on your toes. Oh, no, Tammy says don't do that. Okay, I won't do that.
Tammy's on her toes already.
All right, Tammy, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to make your life harder. Don,
Yes.
Janet,
Janet, yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Steve,
Steve Reddy, yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Norm,
Yes.
and Mark is a yes. Okay, thank you, Don.
Welcome. Are we going to, do we do the warrants at a later time?
Do you mean the precinct warrants?
Correct.
Could you
I guess that's probably just a precinct thing. So, okay, yes, good.
Yeah, I don't know that the budget committee does votes
Yeah.
on those individual precinct warrants.
Yeah, good, thank you.
No, I guess not.
Is that right, Janet? That was my recollection.
I believe you are right.
Okay. Steve, question?
Yeah, so you mentioned it earlier, but would it make sense to take care of Articles 5, 6, and 7 and then circle back to probably the two that we have more discussion on?
Are you talking about on the school?
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to go to the town first, if you don't
Okay.
mind, and then that's.
My
so-
error.
No, not at all. I'm just following the tried and true Krasaniak approach of leave the school for last and make Steve and Michelle wait as long as possible.
Oh, no.
Sorry. No, I know that's not your approach, Janet. But from fewer to more, maybe that's the simpler way to put it. So Ken, could you step us through the warrant article by warrant article, the town?
Sure, and Neil, correct me if I mess up at all. Believe warrant article 3, I move that the budget committee approve an operating budget of $7,662,087.
Is there a second?
Second,
Janet, thank you.
second.
Okay, thanks, Janet. Okay, is there any conversation about this warrant article? And Ken, this reflects all the changes that you described earlier, right?
All the ones that fall under this particular.
Yeah, all the
item.
ones that fall under, yes.
Yeah.
We ready to vote? Looks like it. Okay. Don,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Norm,
Yes.
and Mark is a yes. What's next, Ken?
Okay, I'll move that the Budget Committee approve warrant article for the Capital Reserve Fund in the amount of 706,000.
Is there a second?
Yes.
I'll
Second.
second.
I think Jonathan was in there first, Tammy.
I would just note that the warrant isn't finalized, so I wouldn't use the article number. I just say that amount for capital reserves. It may get confusing if the warrant articles end up different for some reason.
Okay, I
Thank
was
you, Neil.
using the last model we had. Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there any discussion of the capital reserve proposed warrant? Okay, all in favor then? Don,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Norm,
Yes.
and Mark is a yes. Tammy, did you need me to slow down there for a sec?
No, can you just, is warrant article 3 going to stay the same or are we just, so,
Why,
so
why
warrant
don't
article,
you, Tammy, why don't you just drop the numbers for the
so instead of warrant article 3, that is supposed to be the title of it, please?
it should be operating budget.
Okay, okay. Okay, got it. And then capital reserve. Okay, got it.
Okay. Okay, the next warrant article, I'll move that the Budget Committee approve a warrant article for trust funds in the amount of $72,500.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, is there any conversation on the trust fund proposed warrant? Hearing none, okay. I'm gonna call the vote. Don,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Norm,
Yes.
and Mark is a yes.
Okay, next, I'll move the Budget Committee approve a warrant article, individual for financial software in the amount of $61,300.
Is there a second?
Second.
Janet, thank you. Okay, questions or comments on the software? Get off easy, Ken. Okay, here we go. Don,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Norm,
Yes.
and Mark is yes.
I'm not sure on the next one, Neil, does the Budget Committee vote on the the request to sell surplus property?
No.
Okay. Then the next one is, I'll move the Budget Committee approve the warrant article for pay by bag in the amount of $120,000.
Okay, is there a second?
Yes. Me.
Can I have a point of order?
I think it's
Of course.
it's 110.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Thank you for that correction. I knew you were here for a reason, to keep me honest.
Was that your point of order as well, Don?
Yes.
Okay, so to clarify, $110,000.
Got it.
Any discussion on the pay by bag? And there's no remove the pay by bag petition warrant article this year, or is there one? Just curious.
Not yet.
Not yet. There's still time. Okay. Not sure why I brought that up. Okay. Any further questions? Okay. Don,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Norm.
Yes.
Okey-doke.
And what I believe is the final would be a warrant article to approve, for the Budget Committee to approve senior center rental special revenue of $3,200.
We get a second?
Second.
Any questions or conversation on the rental income? Okay. Here we go. Don,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Norm,
Yes.
and Mark is a yes. Thank you, Ken.
Okay, I believe that covers it. Neil, am I missing anything?
That is everything I see.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'll turn it over to Norm.
Great, thank you, Neil. Neil, thank you, Ken. And Neil, if you want to check out, you're welcome to turn over the hosting to me if you don't want to stick around.
I think I will do that. I can
Just
smell
don't-
dinner.
Just don't
I-
shut up. Just don't shut
Shut
up.
off the recording. Right, don't shut off the recording.
It's the recording, yeah, is going to the cloud. Sorry, Michelle and Steve.
We'll make it up to you. Okay, thank you, Neil. Okay, so turning to the school then, and Norm, maybe Steve, you had made a suggestion. I'm going to leave it to Norm as how you want to proceed with the consideration of these warrant articles.
And I'm a rookie, so just bear with me on the motion. If I have to do more in depth in it, I'm just going to go through it. You guys want the easy ones first? Obviously we'll have more deliberation on the budget one, so I want to respect Tammy. Are you okay if we kind of jump around if I'm clear on the warrant number?
As long as you identify the warrant, the number, or you at least say what is going to be included in it in case they change numbers.
We won't change.
Okay, making sure.
So you can refer to the article number.
Perfect.
Okay. I like to.
But Norm, we can't hear you.
He's gone. Norm. Nope.
Hey, Norm, can you hear us? Norm?
Yeah?
We lost your microphone there for everything after I'd like to, we couldn't hear. So start over.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Because I got,
Yes.
yeah, I have a kid
Thank you.
gaming probably. That's why. All right. This is Article 2. I'd like to make a motion to the Budget Committee to approve to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the Budget Committee's recommended amount of $21,732,059 for the support of schools, for the payment of salaries for the school district officials and agents, for the payment of statutory obligations in district, or take any action in relation thereto.
Is there a second?
Second,
That was Don. Thank you, Don.
yes.
Okay, let's open up for some conversation, if there is any, on the proposed operating budget. Norm, I'm just going to ask you if you wouldn't mind refreshing us on the tax rate impact, at least using the existing value, way that you had calculated it of Article 2.
Sure. I don't have the exact number in my head. Michelle, can you help me with, I know the total.
$1.28.
$1.28. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Michelle.
Per thousand, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Isn't she amazing?
Love
She
it.
sure is.
No, but thank you.
You are.
We're going to say yes, and thank you. Okay. Is there any discussion of the proposed operating budget? I'll just share my 3 cents, which is I just want to thank the school board and the administration for the hard work and for putting forward a budget that was very clear and very well explained. I think the drivers of the increase are, you've laid them out in a way that we as a budget committee, I think, certainly understood. We heard a few members of the public that did, that did provide comment over the last couple of weeks, I think echoed that view. It's going to be a lot for the community to swallow, but it's, this is the commitment. I think you're delivering a budget that we can say meets the needs of the school and the student body in a responsible and fiscally responsible and educationally responsible manner. So I'm going to vote in support of this. I'm not seeing any further hands raised, so I'm going to call the vote here. And Tammy, I'm sorry, because people have moved around on my screen a little bit. Do you want me to try to stick with the old order?
I got the initials down.
Okay, so let me start with Don,
Yes.
Janet,
With much thought about this, I will vote yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Steve,
Also with much thought, yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Norm,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
and I am a yes. Great, thank you, Norm. Okay, do you want to move on to Article 3?
Yes. Article 3, I'd like to make recognition to the Budget Committee, motion to the Budget Committee to see if the school district will vote to approve the cost of items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Hopkinton School Board and Hopkinton Educational Association, HEA, which calls for the following changes in salaries and benefits at the current staffing level. Fiscal year 2021-2022, an estimated increase of $241,331. In future to raise and appropriate the sum of this amount for the upcoming fiscal year. I think that's enough.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Great. Anybody want to share comments or questions on the proposed HEA warrant?
I think I would just say, echo a comment that I made at the last meeting, which is that I think that this has been a very challenging year for our teachers. And I think that we've seen tonight that their compensation is certainly fair, but not exorbitant. And I think that this is any increase in their wages, the one that they're getting under this contract is well earned and well deserved.
Thanks, Jonathan. I would echo those comments. Norm, I had a quick question for you, which is I just noticed as I was reading this that the school board vote was 4 in favor, 0 opposed, and 1 abstention. Is there
Yes.
is there any way you could just maybe provide some insight on that?
Yes, Rob's wife is employed with the school district.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Figured it was something like that. Any further comments or questions on the HEA collective bargaining agreement? Okay. Don,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Norm,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
and Mark is a yes. Okay, that's Article 3.
All right. Article 4 is I'd like to make a motion for the budget committee to,
You don't have to do that one, Norm.
oh, I don't, okay, good. Great. Let's move on to Article 5, right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
All right, see, rookie mistake. I'd like to make a motion for the budget committee to approve Article 5 to see if the school district will vote to authorize indefinitely until rescinded to retain year-ended unassigned general funds in an amount not to exceed in a fiscal year 5% of the current fiscal year net assessment in accordance with RSA 198:4-B. I am not, is that pi? What is that?
Roman numeral 2.
Roman numeral 2. Okay, Roman numeral 2.
That was great.
I like
Well
pie,
done.
though. I'm going to give you credit for pie. Good job.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Any discussion on Article 5? Seeing none, okay. I'll ask for your vote then. Don,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Norm,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
and Mark is a yes. Okay, I think you're on Article 6, Norm.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to the budget committee for Article 6 to see if the school district town will raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 for the purpose of the facility project and to authorize the use of that amount of June 30th fund balance for this purpose. This amount represents the interest earned on the bonds proceeds that was transferred to the general fund on or before June 30th.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ken. Any discussion on this warrant article?
Just when it's safe, I want to give you guys all a tour. I really do. It's a
That'll be
beautiful project. It's just amazing, guys. That's all.
Great. Okay. let's go forth then. Don,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Norm,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Mark is a yes. All right. Article 7, Norm.
Yes. Article 7, like to make a motion to the Budget Committee on Article 7 to see if the school district will vote to establish a technology expendable trust fund per RSA 198:20-C V for the purpose of purchasing equipment to appropriate $25,000 to be placed in the fund and authorize the school board to transfer up to $25,000 from the year-end undesignated fund balance surplus available on June 30th, 2021. Further, to name the school board as agents to extend from this fund or.
Keep going. There's three more lines.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the second page. It's not in my packet, so we're in a little bit of a.
The
Is
second
it on the
page,
back of, is it on the back?
no, with we were missing a page, or it was supposed to be. So,
To
but I
take
can,
any other action in relation thereto.
yes.
So just that was me saying that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
Sorry, it was all a quiz.
All right. And Tammy, you've got that written down anyway. No, you don't?
Send it to me.
Okay. I mean, that was, yeah, we have the digital copy of the materials.
Yeah, the last two lines down the flip side. Yes, please.
Okay, so that's a request to you, Norm, or to Steve, if you can just make sure that Tammy gets that second page of the warrant articles that came to us this week. Maybe send it to the whole budget committee, because I didn't get it either.
No, I didn't either.
Do you guys have your budget bulletin?
It's in the package, but it's not
It
in the normal alignment. It's in there. I had to look for it twice.
Yeah, I couldn't find it. I found it in last week's though, so I'm just looking at last week's.
How about digitally? Was it there? And I used the digital one that I gave you and it was there, but you guys didn't have the digital one?
I can look at, it'll have to be a clip and paste if I do it that way, but I can look at it and just
I'll send it to you.
transcribe it. Okay.
Thanks.
What if you just share your screen, Steve?
Happy to.
Yeah, because actually it'll be needed for the next one.
And then he could just read it.
Oh, see, I don't have that.
Because I look everywhere for it, and I'm like,
I think what happened is when the copies were made, it wasn't realized that there was the other side of the page
Right.
was printed.
All right, so Norm, do you want to just reread this one?
yes, I apologize for that,
No,
guys.
don't worry about it.
So I'd like to make a motion to the Budget Committee to approve Article 7.
7, yeah.
To see if the school district will vote to establish a technology expendable trust fund per RSA 198:20-C V for the purpose of purchasing technology equipment and to raise the appropriate $25,000 to be placed in the fund and authorize the school board to transfer up to $25,000 from the year-end undesignated fund balance surplus available on June 30th, 2021. Further, to name the school board as agents to expend from the fund or to take other actions in relation thereto.
Perfect.
Nailed it. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, great, thank you. And any questions or comments on this article? Okay, we'll call the question then. Don,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Ginny,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Norm,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Mark is a yes as well.
All right.
Good work, Norm. Thank you.
Good job, guys. All right. Final article, correct? I'd like to make a motion for Article 8 to the Budget Committee to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate one. That's not funny.
It was too big. I want to make sure it's big. For you now.
See, you're providing some comedy tonight for me. All right. So yeah, we're gonna start over. I'd like to make a motion to the Budget Committee for Article 8 to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate $150,000 to be added to the school district building repair and maintenance fund established March 6, 1993, and renamed at the March 9, 2009 school district meeting, authorizing the school board to transfer up to $100,000 from year-end undesignated fund balance surplus available on June 30th, 2021 for that purpose, with the balance amount of $50,000 to come from general taxation or take any action in relation thereto.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a quick question. It's more really kind of a semantic question, but probably for Steve or Michelle. Is it the case that in the perpetuity of this fund, or in perpetuity, as long as this fund exists, that this language referencing the original establishment date and the renaming date always will have to be in the warrant article every year going forward?
That's advice of counsel.
Okay.
Until it changes, that unless someone makes a change to the date, it usually stays in there.
Okay. Thanks. Any questions or comments on the building repair and maintenance fund? All right. Go to the vote then. Don?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Affirmative.
Steve?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Norm?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
And Mark is a yes. Okay. Good work, people. Thank you very much, Norm. Thank you, Steve and Michelle, so much. We have a couple more items of business, so but you do not have to stick around for them.
All right.
Thank you,
sir.
Steve.
Good
Thank you,
night.
Michelle.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Just one comment to Steve. It must perplex him that on his retirement, we put this thing through this easy.
It's not over yet, Don.
At least on the budget committee it is.
You know what they say, finish strong.
I guess it isn't.
Great, thank you all for that. We're now at the any other business to come before the board, and the piece of business that I want to raise is the preparation of the Hopkinton Budget Committee written report for inclusion in the town's annual report. This is something that gets put into that nice document that is available to all of the to everybody in town. And I've done it the last 3 years. I don't know who did it before me, Janet. I can't remember, but I would welcome somebody taking over the mantle. I'd be happy to send you the write-up that I've done, and you can use it as the basis of whatever you would like to put together. What I've done in the past is written a draft and then shared it with the budget committee for your review and suggestions. And then, I mean, ideally the budget committee would vote on this, but we haven't always had the time to do that. It's not a particularly controversial thing, but it is a way to reflect, reminding the town of the budget committee's role, the process that we follow, and any sort of what are any sort of the big issues that the budget committee was taking a look at this year. The drop dead date that this is due is February 9th, 2 weeks from yesterday. So I'm going to ask and see if someone might be willing to volunteer to take this on this year.
Rich, could you mute your gas noises? Thank you.
Oh,
You're so mean. I don't like you anymore.
Who's doing it?
Come on, people.
I nominate Jonathan.
I can do it if you want me to, Mark.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Rich.
I would love it if you would do that.
Thank you, Rich.
I will
But
email
I'm
you
going to leave
tonight.
my noises on. So there.
There you go.
Well,
I will
gives
email
me a
you
laugh.
Would you like to hear some cows mooing? I can do that for you.
Thank you very much, Rich. I appreciate that. Is there any other business that anyone wants to bring before the board this evening?
I just wanted to clearly understand when I make the presentation in 2 weeks to the of our approved budget, I'll be using the 0.5% increase for the valuation. But if on Monday night, the select board feels that, well, on the operating revenue, maybe we could estimate a higher revenue number, can I just put that in? Because that does not affect any of the warrant articles that we've approved.
I think so. Let me just ask if any other members of the budget committee feel otherwise. You're talking about making adjustments that aren't going to affect essentially the
Tax rate.
the wording of the budget of the warrant articles or the substance.
Correct. They won't affect the warrant articles per se. They would affect the tax rate.
I thought it was,
True.
Excuse me?
wasn't it agreed that everyone would continue, the school would continue with theirs and the town would continue with the present figures that they've been using?
No, we voted 5-4 with one abstention to recommend that both bodies use a 0.5% increase.
Okay, I thought that was, I did see that, but I thought it meant that it was not an agreed upon vote. Let me just go back to it.
Don, go ahead.
That's, I was going to finish off with this. That's the point that perplexes me. We know that the school is solidly wanting to not use the added 0.5% or any added percent. And we had basically 100% consensus when you asked if they should be the same. And yet we voted to say that 5-4, that it could be different. That just totally perplexes me.
Right, so if I go back to it, Mark finished that we had no consensus and the guidance was to use the different figures.
I don't think, if I said that, that's not what I meant to say. Well, we didn't have unanimous agreement.
Correct, that's what you said.
But
No
we did
consensus.
have a vote. We did have a majority vote
Right.
recommending the use of a 1.5%.
Yeah, it was confusing at that time because I saw that there was 5 yes, 4 no, and 1 abstention. So, and when you said there was no consensus and the guidance was to use different figures, that's where I lost it because it's like, there was like basically 5-5 or 4, right? So when you said the guidance was to use different figures, that's when I thought that people were going to just use the current figures. So
No, what I meant was the guidance is we're asking each board to use a different figure than they have used to this point, not different figures from one another.
okay, so that
Because the school has
needs to be clarified because
yeah. So, but let's come back to the point you raised, Don. I mean, I think we all knew what we were talking about here, and so if we didn't give any guidance, then we have 2 bodies using different numbers, at least as of today. We could have adopted one of those, but we didn't vote in favor of that. We didn't vote in favor of the 0%, which would have been voting in favor of what the school had done. And we didn't vote in favor of, or we didn't have expressed interest in going to 1%, which is what the town did. And we did by a very slim majority, right? The slimmest of vote in favor of recommending that both bodies use a 0.5% increase.
But my perplexity is the fact that when we polled whether we thought there should be the same number, and we shouldn't have two separate bases for the assessment, that we all thought there should be a single number.
We did, and that's what, and the vote was by a slim majority that both bodies use the same number, which is a 0.5% increase from the 2020 valuation.
But I repeat, what perplexes me is that we know the school is not going to do that.
Well, we don't know that.
Well,
You're making a
Norm-
recommendation that Norm is going to bring back to school body. Norm said he couldn't vote for that because the school had to this point used 1%, but we don't know that the school might not. I mean, the school is going to, school board is going to have to decide, do they want to utilize the recommendation that came from the budget committee or stick with what they've got? I think ultimately that's their decision.
What I heard from Norm was that the school, when they had this discussion last week or this current week, that they unanimously said that they wanted to stay with the basic rate, the basic assessment. Now, it's inconceivable to me that well, not inconceivable, but he could go back and say, hey, the budget committee is thinking you could use something else. But when I gathered the way he said that how stern they were on that they were going to stay with the basic rate. Is that correct, Norm?
That's what I got from them. They were firm at staying what Michelle's document was. So I guess where I'm trying to think of, I'll bring it back to the board, what you guys have mentioned. We can say no still, correct? And present our budget based on our tax rate. And you guys, I mean, raising of the funds is a different thing. We're just talking about the tax valuation.
Yep.
So in our presentation, would we have to do what you guys wanted to see and or just the school boards? You know what I'm saying? I just want to respect you guys in what you've recommended. I just want to make sure when I'm presenting, if the board says we want to stay with what we have, it's what we feel is important as a board, we present you with the tax rate that we agree on, correct?
Yeah, because the budget committee isn't recommending your tax rate. We're recommending your
the
recommending
increase,
your proposed budget. And so
yeah.
if you choose, I mean, I think the budget committee made a recommendation. And again, we should acknowledge that that was a recommendation by a very slim majority.
Yep.
To use this in your tax rate calculation, and which is what you will share with the community as part of the presentation. I don't think you have to. I think that's your choice. I think it's confusing to voters to have two different calculations, but that's just, my opinion. And Don, I understand what you're saying, and I'm not sure do you want us to vote on it again?
No, I don't. I just don't understand how you can, think, knowing that the school was solidly wanting to hold, and yet, and we solidly wanted to have one rate, why we would bring this up at this time of the year? Well, why not wait till next year and really vet this thing out rather than add a piece of confusion? I'm just disappointed, but that's okay. It was a 5-4 vote. It's fine.
And the town can decide to do, you can decide to stick with what you had, or you can decide to go along with what the school is doing, or you can decide to go to a 0.5%. I think, it should be made, whatever you end up using should be made clear to the voters.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh, certainly.
And I'm sure it will be.
And similarly, what I was trying to get at was that if the select board votes Monday night to they'd like to use a different revenue projection, that's not an issue because it's not a warrant article. Okay.
Tammy, do you feel like you got the clarification for the minutes?
I got it, as long as it's clear in the video part, but it's all right. I'll have it in the minutes. Got it. Can you hear me?
I can. I think we're all just sort of processing that conversation. just personally just listening and reflecting and
Just like
processing the
minute.
conversation and the points that have been made.
Okay.
I don't see a need for us to meet next week at this point in time, because we have voted on all of these warrant articles.
Yep.
So Norm, for your benefit, Ken's a veteran here, and maybe Thomas, for your benefit, can we just run through real quickly at the public hearing, which will be very different this year because we'll be doing it on Zoom. We will invite each of the four of you who are the representatives to present your budget to the whoever participates, to the public. So if you have slides, I think I would advise slides. We'll make sure that you can share your screen at that time. Janet, did you used to do did you give an opening statement at that meeting, or more just call the meeting to order?
No, I gave sort of an opening statement.
Okay.
You know, welcoming everybody and
Thank
that
you.
kind of thing.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll have the presentations. After each presentation, we will open it up to, I think we do it one by one, where we open up to the public after each budget is presented.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then once all of the presentations have been made and we've been able to hear the public comment, we will again vote on each warrant article and each, in the case of the precincts, the two budgets. Yes, Janet.
You might want to make it clear that if someone speaks, that they won't be asked, if they want to speak again, they won't be asked until each person who hasn't spoken has a chance.
Yeah.
And you might want to put a time limit too, because we've had that problem in the past.
Yes.
And name and address.
Yes, and name and address. Okay, that's a good one, Tammy.
Okay, that's great. And I think based on what I've seen in the past, a 3-minute time limit seems reasonable.
Yeah, I think so.
And Mark, do you think that we should have like a time limit on how long our evening is, like 11 o'clock or something like that? Or do you think we should just keep going until it's all done and everybody's had a chance to speak, if it's going really long?
Oh, good question. What I would open that up. I'm trying to think. In my years, we've probably gone till about 10, but I'm not sure I've ever been in one that was maybe 10:30. But yeah, it's reasonable to think, what would happen if we cut the meeting off at a certain time? Would we have to continue it then?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, you would.
I mean, we never had it virtually. Well, we have, haven't we? That's right.
It just seems like this kind of meeting takes a lot longer than a regular kind of meeting. That's all.
The only advantage of this meeting over some of the ones in the past, both all the budgets were approved by the budget committee, so you don't have different budgets for, like, the school, 2 different ones, which takes a lot longer.
And also unanimously.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And there hasn't been a lot of public comment.
I think also, like, just sort of gently reminding that, you know, we don't need to hear that, like, want to respect the public, but certainly if a point has been made, have to be made multiple times.
Right.
Right. At a certain point, we can certainly make that if we're starting to see a lot of repetition. Okay. Well, Rich, I think perhaps we can think about 11 o'clock as a cutoff if we need to, and we can reevaluate if we're actually going that long and if it seems like we're really close or not.
Sounds good.
Pretty sure my energy will diminish pretty quickly about then, if not beforehand. So 3-minute limit. We'll ask for name and address. We will call on, I'll do my best to call on first timers before repeats. Remind people that they don't need to restate points that have been made previously, or at least those that have been made multiple times. Okay. Anything else in terms of preparation for the public hearing? What I've been doing, by the way, is I've been sharing the budget committee agenda and notice with Susan Covert as soon as it's ready to go, so that she can put it into her community emails. It will be put on the, so we'll try to get a bunch of notice out there. It will be on the posted, of course, as in all the normal ways it gets posted on the town's website. And I'll be curious how many people show up.
Yeah, it will be.
Hopefully many. But
be interesting. Yes.
Okay, great. And anything else for the board tonight?
So our next meeting is the 10th, the public meeting. Do we want to get together a little bit before the appointed time, or like just in time, or how do you want that to work, Mark, on a virtual meeting?
That's a good point. And that hearing I have in my calendar is 6 p.m.
Oh, okay.
Is that what you, is that?
Yeah, they've always been, I believe, 6 p.m.
It'll probably be advisable to jump on, you know, I'll try to jump on 10 minutes early or so. But I think as long as everyone's on by 10, I mean by 6, not by 10. Whew, getting late. That should work. Rich, do you want folks on a little early for one reason or another?
Well, maybe just 10 minutes, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it seems like with a virtual meeting, you know, some people get there right on time and some people are, you know, a few minutes late. But, you know, when this is a big important meeting, maybe everybody should be there a little early.
Okay. Let's try to get on. I'll commit, and I'll ask Neil if he can just open the Zoom 10 minutes early, or be ready to open the Zoom 10 minutes early, and I'll be on by then. It's a good idea.
The interesting thing is going to be how we sign the MS forms. That may, I think Neil's going to try to do that electronically, like we do with, you know, other documents.
He's working on that to find out what is allowed right now under all these, you know, these different executive and emergency orders, if electronic is allowed. If not, we'll have to do something nice. He said it's due on Friday the 12th. So if we can't do it electronically, then we would ask people probably to stop by the town hall.
Yeah.
Fix their signature.
Yeah, I was just going to say
Thursday or Friday.
And if those who can't do it, I'd be glad to bring it to them.
Thanks, Don. Yeah. So we'll get it sorted out one way or the other.
Good.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, Tammy.
I assume that's due Friday, February 12th?
That was my understanding from Neil.
Okay. Making sure.
Anything further tonight?
I'll miss you guys next week.
Okay, let's have a motion to adjourn then.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Tammy, can we just wait? Can we raise our hands, or do we need to do?
Well, I need to know who's second. I got
Second.
Janet.
Second.
Norm seconded it.
Okay, got it. I got you all.
All in favor, raise your hands. Any opposed, raise your hands. Okay, folks, thank you very much. Thank you, Tammy. We'll see you all in a couple of weeks.
All right.
Thank you, Mark.
Take care.